A door.
Just heard the door. Oh, wait a minute.
Yep.
There we go.
Perfect timing, actually.
Recording in progress.
And Logan, are we good? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the Town of Essex Select Board meeting for Monday, December 1st to order. For those in the room, I would ask that you silence your cell phones. For those online, you may have noticed that your microphones will be muted by default until recognized by the chair. This is the result of some bad actors in prior meetings, and it's an attempt to prevent those unfortunate events from recurring. So I'm sorry that we needed to do that. So you'll just need to raise your hand in order to be recognized. First item on our agenda, second item on our agenda, additions or changes. Is there anything from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Anything from the board?
I don't have an agenda change, but can I ask a question? Is there a way to do the video also, or no?
We're
Okay.
yeah, we're looking into that.
Okay.
We
Just-
should have a different experience next
Yeah.
time.
Awesome.
But great question. So no changes or additions to the agenda, which brings us to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time when members of the public can address the select board on items that are not on the agenda and items that are on the consent agenda. We just ask that you please be civil, please be brief as a general rule. Any comments longer than a few minutes represent a need to have a broader conversation, either via email, a meeting, or being added to a future agenda. Please keep this in mind as you're speaking. Please keep your cell phone silenced, refrain from side conversations. Please be respectful of staff and those speaking, and when called on by the chair, please state your name and residence for the record. So with that, if you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you're online, you can click the raise hand button that's in the lower center of your screen. So with that, I'll open it for public comment. Ken?
Good evening, Ken Signorello. I just wanted to call your attention to an item that's in your reading file. I know you won't be talking about it per se. The Conservation and Trails Committee is responsible for conducting a survey on the Conservation Fund every 5 years. I was just reading in the Town Conservation Fund policy, and the report in there is something that we produced. We actually have a presentation available, and was kind of hoping that this would be a business item tonight, but maybe it might make more sense to be a business item when you're doing the budget, so that we can consider maybe the contribution being made to the Conservation Fund, because that is a budget item, obviously. It's a very nice presentation, and the memo has fancy pictures, and take a look at it if you can. As I was looking through the Conservation Fund policy, I was just noticing that it's totally up to the select board to decide whether or not to award an application. And I just want to remind you that we have an application that's pending for over 1.5 years now. And I don't think I've heard the select board discuss it since we presented it originally. So I would really hope that, because we do have another property that we would like to consider using the Conservation Fund for, but we hesitate to bother since the one that we've already applied for hasn't moved. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that and try to move it along. Thank you.
And this is the proposed boat launch?
The Riverside property, right?
Okay, yeah, and at our last meeting, the Winooski Valley Park District, that's waiting on them to come back to us and the Conservation and Trails Committee with information before.
I appreciate
Discussing and
that
moving
you're
that.
tethering the two together. One is not tethered to the other. There is a specific application to buy a specific parcel, happens to be next to something that Winooski Valley Park District looks at. It's very attractive, no question about it. Both do not have to happen. And I would encourage you to think about going forward with just what was proposed. That will give you something to have in your pocket to work with the Winooski Valley Park District on. For example, the cost of developing that property is probably way more than the cost of buying it. That could easily be traded, for example. You could donate the property that you'd be buying with the Conservation Fund to Winooski Valley Park District in exchange for them developing it into, it may or may not be a boat launch. Maybe if the other property is acquired, it might be. Not the point. This is river access next to a highway. There's nothing like it in the town. And the price is very, very reasonable. The party that owns it is willing to sell it. You have an application, don't tether it. Instead, use it to barter. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Any other items for public to be heard? Seeing none, we will move forward to the consent agenda. Ethan?
Move the approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. There is no discussion on consent. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving right along to our first business item, discussion with the Planning Commission. Good evening.
Good evening. Joshua Knox, Chair of the Planning Commission. How can I be of service tonight?
There was a memo letter that went with some suggested questions that the Select Board was interested in learning more. I'm just bringing that up right now.
Let me pull that.
So your work plan, I mean, your Planning Commission, whether you have a set work plan, stipends, how do volunteers feel about them? If you have any budget requests, if we want to start there, and the board can chime in with any questions that they may have specifically.
So starting with work plan. So what our what our main objective is, as you know, 2025 was a year of transition for the Planning Commission from being functionally a Planning Commission and sort of pseudo DRB to being a pure Planning Commission. So what we did and have been doing throughout the year is focus everything sort of based on, first of all, the town plan. The town plan was the result of a collaborative process for about, I would say, a year and a half from soup to nuts when we first made a committee, and then it was passed by about 75% of the people. And so our work plan has a lot of what are the things in the town plan that call for regulatory changes. And some of those things, I mean, what you've got to remember is the town plan is sort of a should or a shouldn't. It's not a can or a can't. And so we see primarily in that regard making regulations that say what a developer can do and what can't do. Then the DRB takes it from there. And then the other things that are in front of us are dealing with state mandates, state changes in law vis-a-vis like density requirements and things like that to bring all of our stuff in alignment and up to code. That's the basic thrust of it. And we've got, I don't have the document with me, but we've got a short term, middle term, long term. Here's what we're working on now, here's what we're doing.
Okay. Questions from the board? Curiosities? Ethan?
I got a curiosity question just because I've heard it a couple times lately, but I haven't fully investigated it, but it's been brought to the select board a couple times that the town plan is actually a legal document. Is that not your interpretation?
It's a legal
of it?
document, but one of the areas that we're having sort of philosophical discussions about on the commission is to what degree it can bind a particular development. And that's where regulation has to be specific. Because if the town plan says, and the one we always get, or the one that the DRB always gets and will talk to us about, is it'll say development has to be compatible with surroundings. And that's very much a should. The town plan will say it has to be in
Harmony with nature.
Yeah, harmony with nature, compatible
I know
with
what you're
surroundings.
talking about.
And if that's not backed up by properly worded regulation, that gets I don't want to say it gets the DRB into trouble, but it makes it harder for them to interpret what we meant. And we had the DRB at our previous meeting in November, and we talked about that very thing. And what we said and this goes into our work plan, what we think about doing going forward is putting something in the regulation at the beginning, not quite an operative clause, but saying, since the purpose of this regulation is to be in harmony with nature, here are the following metrics. And so it is a legal document in the sense it gives the goals and priority of the town, but vis-a-vis individual developments, that comes down to the regulations.
Thank you.
Shannon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well as all the members on your committee for serving. I know it's a lot of time, and especially with the split and the transition, it's been a lot of discovery and figuring out how you go about that. I've just got a few questions, kind of building off what Ethan was saying. With the split, I know that we have a few members that kind of bridge the gap. How do you feel that's going? Do you feel it is an appropriate number that is splitting that gap and that it's balancing it well, or do you feel it's too much, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's balancing well, personally. One of the advantages of it is we will know pretty quickly what the DRB is having issues with. And by having issues with, sort of exactly what I just said to you, what they might need clarity on from us. And I don't feel there's undue influence either way. I feel it's pretty appropriate. And the three people that we have serving on both are I think are quite effective at both conveying, hey, the DRB is having issues with this. What I was going to say a little later is the DRB at our meeting, our joint meeting, said that steep slopes and buffers are things that they're having issues with. And when the DRB members, who are also PC members, said that in earlier meetings and then at the joint meeting, they didn't tell us, and we'd like you to do this, or in the absence of you doing this, we're sort of doing it the way they're not. They're saying, here's what the issue is. If you'd like to figure out how to solve it, how we can solve it together, great. But I feel as though they're keeping those two things separate, the three people. And if it were to become a majority, hypothetically, maybe that would be an issue. And that's very hypothetical, and that's in your hands to determine in terms of who you appoint or who you don't appoint. But I haven't had any problems with 3 of the 7. And I don't think other members of the commission who aren't already on the DRB have felt anything's off there.
That's good to hear. And I appreciate you bringing up the steep slopes and the buffer. I know that you're doing a more intensive look into those issues. Do you have any update on that or a timeline for when that presentation could be prepared?
Again, at our last DRB, we had a discussion on that. And we also have side working groups. And where we are with that now is we need to come up with basically model regulation. Because one of the issues we really want to determine, again, it comes to the specificity of the regulation, not the intent of the plan, is does steep slopes refer to a very, very specific part of the property, or do we want something that more says over the course of the property, the average steep slope, or some sort of middle thing? Because again, the intent is there are certain places of a particular parcel you probably shouldn't build. And 20% has always been given as the percentage of slope that you absolutely shouldn't go over. But again, it comes down to exactly how you want to measure it and what that means, whether it has implications for the whole property or just a segment of the property. So we're at the stage where we're looking for a model regulation to be sort of presented to us by the working group.
Is that similar also with the buffer study?
Yeah, but so there has been a presentation on the buffers that had, again, it was sort of options. Like they recommended going from 50 feet to 75 feet and things about the foliage there. And we haven't formalized, yes, this is what we want. But we're at the stage where it's just a matter of writing up model regulation and making a decision on it. Like we could write something up and say, this isn't actually what we want exactly, because we want to get this right.
Sure. No, I appreciate you taking a look at those, and obviously, keeping our fingers on the pulse of the recent issues. I think it's important to get some clear standards in place. My last question is kind of that idea of the blend or the sharing responsibilities between the PC and the DRB. I'm curious, in your opinion or the opinion of the commission, do you feel that a person should be a board chair of both the PC and the DRB?
As in the same person be chair of the PC or the DRB, or should there be a chair at all? I'm not sure I follow.
Well, should there be the same person holding both those, that same leadership positions?
Broadly speaking, no, but again, this is a hypothetical, so I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what that would necessarily look like. But right now it's two different people, and I think two different people works better.
Great, thank you.
Just because the purview of responsibility, it's two different hats.
Agreed.
Any other board questions? Kendall?
The only question I have is going back to the separation between the DRB and the PC. You said that it has worked out well having that transition between the two. Do you have a plan, should that change, where there is no longer that transition of people on either or both boards?
Oh, you mean if there's no overlap?
Yeah, no overlap. Do you have a plan how you would address that?
I mean, the chair of the DRB is, as you know, on the PC, and were he for some reason not to be on the PC, I think we would do something similar to what we did now. He contacted me in his guise as DRB chair to talk about a joint meeting. We would still do that.
Okay.
We would still keep in touch, I would hope.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there anything that the board could do to help you be more effective? And this isn't saying that you aren't effective.
No,
I just want to clarify that. But to help be more effective, whether it's a budget request, communication request, anything of that sort.
I have a couple sort of policy things, but I don't know if this is the time for that specific thought. Nothing about like logistics.
We can have that conversation.
Specifically at our previous meeting, our last PC meeting, we had also talked about the 1B status, and I know it had been rejected by the board before, the select board, but we have slightly changed what our ask is. We've narrowed the area covered by it to just what would be called mixed use north and mixed use south. And if you picture sort of the new Essex Town Center area, the mixed use north is basically where all of the new buildings are proposed, and that property going back. And then mixed use south is sort of the current area where you have McDonald's and everything down there. And so I think when we first came before you for 1B, we were talking about going all the way to the library essentially, because we wanted to include the entire ETC next, and this time we focused it on just that particular part. Because the idea behind 1B, and again, this is the shoulds versus the cans, is the town was very clear, both through the town plan and the margin by which it passed, like if there's going to be development in town, this is where we wanted it to be. Both for infrastructure reasons, there's already density there and things like that. So we thought that narrowing our 1B ask to that exact spot where the most density could be possible would perhaps be more of interest to you as a board, and we thought it would get the point across that what we're trying to do is get density in a particular area of town.
Gotcha.
And I know that it's not an action item for tonight, that's
Yep.
one of the things.
Yeah.
Another policy-based thing is related is we haven't taken any action yet, but on the other side of 289, there's a property, the mini golf, and then sort of going along 289, sort of your southwest, where the landowner has come in and asked to talk about rezoning that for denser housing possibilities there as well. It's not currently in the sewer core, and we indicated we were interested, but since this would be the beginning of a long process, potentially, almost if we do it, certainly involving an amendment to the town plan, which require a future use map change, which require a town vote, and therefore moving the sewer core boundary, which would be a result of a zoning vote. I'm just bringing that before you now as well. As sort of what else is on our plate outside the work plan or whatever the state is asking us to do.
Okay. And are those two items on your work plan?
The 1B isn't really an item so much as we passed a motion that we'd like people to do this. We haven't officially started work on that other property because we wanted to sort of get sort of your sense your sense of it, whether this would be a useful use of our time. We, broadly speaking, were interested because it's on the other side of 289, yes, but it's directly adjacent to the ETC area. And as you go down 15, there's like that little gap between the boundary with the junction and then on 289 where the sort of, there clearly, it makes sense to put things there. And I'm speaking very broadly. It makes sense to put things there. When we get a request to put something there, we'd like to start looking into it.
That would be an interesting discussion.
No, it absolutely would. And we ourselves are not 100% committed to here's what must happen, but the landowner came before us and we said, this is an interesting thing to look at, but we didn't want to jump the gun if we knew that this table would be completely opposed to the concept, because it would involve eventually infrastructure. As it stands right now, the infrastructure isn't there to build housing at the kind of density that would make sense. And so there have to be, it's kind of an order of operations thing.
Yeah.
We'd zone it, or rather the town would rezone it as a result of all the process that we talked about. And then that would mean infrastructure, and then that would mean building.
Right. And that would be within the statutory authority of the Planning Commission to decide whether to rezone, but I appreciate the food for thought and look forward to potential future conversations about that.
Yeah, just wanted to get that out there well ahead of time before we had anything serious about it.
Sounds good. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment for a conversation with the Planning Commission. Not seeing any hands online. Oh, Jay Percy.
Okay, hi, it's Diane Percy. I live here in Essex, and I just wanted to take the time before Joshua left to thank Joshua and the other planning commissioners in carefully and thoughtfully guiding us through the recent decision that had to be made regarding the recent zoning change request by the state. I just wanted to publicly state that I felt the Planning Commission and the leadership of the Planning Commission took the time that was needed to find and review various data points. They had to listen to a variety of people's perspectives, including my own. They definitely had to remain calm throughout the whole process and then come to a thoughtful decision using the town plan. So I just wanted to publicly take a second and thank Joshua and the rest of the Planning Commission. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up online, and I don't see any hands up in the room. So, Josh, thank you. Thanks to the Planning Commission and the good work you do.
One quick question for Ethan. Did Parker get a deer? Everett hasn't made it clear whether he got one.
He did.
He did?
Youth
Okay.
weekend.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad he was able to make that one game on Sunday. Good night.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Our next conversation is with the Police Community Advisory Board. I believe Gwendolyn is here online. So Gwendolyn, we're gonna get you unmuted here. Okay. So you should be able to unmute now.
Zoom work, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Is the chief there tonight? Good. I'm only assuming this, that you just kind of want an update on what the PCAB is doing. Otherwise, you can ask questions, I guess. I think the big thing to say about the Police Community Advisory Board is that our survey is done and the data is in. And I'm hoping the chief can chime in because I'm really not good with remembering statistics. Alyssa March, the Community Affairs Liaison, did a fantastic presentation at our last meeting last month. And I'm sure that the information will be available to everyone. It's quite an interesting process. And I think that what we're going to find is we have information that's going to lead us to a more effective work plan. We have, you know, we've been working together for almost 2 years, and the survey took up such a big amount of time and energy, but I think it's going to lead us to better things. One of the focuses that I know we've talked about at the meetings is that needing to have more outreach and to get people to know that there is a police community advisory board, and that's something that we're going to work on. We also have done work to look at all of the public events that the police attend and make sure that when there are places that are appropriate for a PCAB member to come and be present, that they will be there. So that's moving forward as well. Does anybody have any questions? I'm kind of losing my voice.
Board questions? Ethan?
Hi, Gwendolyn. Thank you for everything that you've been working on. It sounds like you guys have been busy. My only question was going to be, I know that the chief does an amazing job. I was just curious, do you guys need any extra support in any way?
I think we're still one member short. Are we not? The chief will be able to tell that for sure.
One member from the town.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say still. We just lost that person over the summertime, so it hasn't been that long that position's been open.
But we did get a new member from the city, and I'll tell you what, it makes such a difference to have the full board. We had a meeting a few months back where it was just two of us, and so, you know, unfortunately there are times when we can have nice discussions, but we can't really vote on things. So drag those people in.
Shannon?
Chief, do you want to say anything about the survey results?
I'll let you answer.
Gwendolyn, sorry, this is Shannon Jackson. Just before we jumped into the survey, I wanted to build off of what Ethan was asking that you brought up about the open seat. What are you doing to let people know there's an open seat? How are you, as a board chair, working to bring new voices into the committee, as well as let people know there's opportunity to serve?
That's a good question. I've left it up to the chief, and I assume that chief and the city have
EMC has joined the meeting.
Conversation. So yeah, we haven't done much, but we certainly could and should.
So can I help? Can I help with that?
Please.
So one of the things that Alyssa and I have been encouraging the board to do is be involved more with the community and try to be at different events, that kind of thing, to speak to community members and everything about those positions that are open, and just get that message out there about what the PCAB involves and what they're tasked with doing. So just within the last couple of months, we kind of went around their table. They went around their table assigning who was going to be at what event. And a couple of those are this month, and I think we have people lined up to go to those. So we've been encouraging them to be alongside the police department and get that message out. In regards to like public messaging, Alyssa has been doing a good job of putting that message out about needing members. And Gwendolyn is correct. It's been a struggle for us to get things done, or at least have solid discussions that carry on over several meetings because of the flux of members coming and going over the last couple of years. And we've had Gwendolyn and at least one other member who have been like long serving, but everybody else has been pretty much come and go. So it's been a little tough, but within the last 4 months, we've had some of the same people, and that's how we were able to get the survey done, and we were finally able to get some of that work done. So, and just going into the survey a bit, what she's referring to for people that may not know is the PCAB. I tasked the PCAB with developing a survey, or at least assisting us in developing a survey for the community that would be similar to the one that we did in 2020, right after George Floyd was killed. And we wanted to just see where we're at, compare, how we scored then versus what we're doing now, and see if any of that work that we've done over the last 5 years has made a difference, or where we're at. So she's right. It took about 1.5 years to develop that, because there was a lot of different ideas that had to been. There were some different themes that people wanted, and it took some discussions that were pretty lengthy, and did go over several meetings about what we wanted in that survey. I knew what I wanted, and I kind of gave them some direction, but it did take quite a bit to get that finally done. And once we got it put out in August, we left it open for, well, I think it's still open actually. So we're still taking survey results. So if you haven't taken it, encourage people to take it.
We were supposed to close it on November 1st.
We were going to close it, but I'm not sure whether we actually are going to leave that open or not. I think we might have left it open just for people to still take it if they chose to. But we gathered our data on the 1st, and I think we shared that with y'all in your packets. So we presented that to the PCAB 2 weeks ago, and I was asked by one of the members what I thought, or what my thoughts on that were. I mean, I was very pleased as a leader of the department. I was very pleased with what I saw. Obviously, there are things that we can improve on, but we expect that, and that's what Gwendolyn is talking about now. Those things that we saw, the themes that came out, those are some of the things that the PCAB can now focus on trying to help us with, and direct our policy and that kind of thing to help with that. So that's what
I think one of the striking things that I noted in listening to the discussions about the results is that, generally speaking, it seems like the town is pretty pleased with the police department and its performance. But then again, they don't really necessarily have a lot of connection with the police department. So one of my suggestions is that perhaps the chief and I go on the road and do some outreach with the press. And really, one of my, I haven't said this at the meeting, but one of my goals is I would love to have all the citizens take the Citizens Police Academy course that is taught from time to time through the department. It is such an enlightening course, and I think that if citizens understood better what the police do and why they have to do what they do, it would be an amazing thing.
Jay Percy has left the meeting.
Ethan.
Just a quick note there for us as the select board, but we should make sure that we're promoting that on the town website frequently. Is that something that we've been doing? Opening?
I believe we do. I would have to look, and I think Andy's going to go check right now.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we are actively searching as well, because although it's great that they reach out, I believe, like all the other committees and commissions, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're advertising properly and frequently.
Agreed.
I'll check to make sure that we have it posted.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other board questions?
I'm going to show my own ignorance here. I did look at the survey. Is it spelled out in the survey, the difference between the 2020 results and the most recent results?
It is not. There's no indication as to what happened in the other ones. There were some themes in that first one that we left out. Particularly, there were some questions in there regarding governance and the role of the select board, the role of government. So we kind of left those out. We wanted this more focused on policing, but no, those other results weren't left in there anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only ask because that is a pretty good benchmark as far as improvement. It's a big difference. So.
Then, thanks for the idea. Maybe we should put those results back out again and compare those with because we haven't actually gone necessarily public with those results that we've gotten so far. We've been kind of considering how we want to do that, but that's certainly a positive idea. Gwendolyn, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that for sure.
So.
And Kendall stole my questions. I was going to ask about whether the questions were the same and whether you could indicate improvement or a decrease in the last 5 years. Shannon?
Just building off of Kendall's comment, I know that you mentioned, Chief, that it was kind of your initiative that brought this survey back to life after 2020 being the first time. Is there going to be a more of a regimented, systematic time period in which we do these surveys?
Yeah, I think so, because we waited 4 years to do this, and now we just have to figure out whether how long we should wait before we do another one and continuously do the. Obviously, we don't want to bombard the public with surveys about the police department, but still, we every so often we should be gauging the temperature of the work that we're doing and making sure we're getting those opinions from our public. Yeah.
No, I could see it being every time we have a town plan come out, we've had at least 2 of these or something. It sounds like that's the pattern we're on presently.
Sure.
Or if it's more of a, the terms on the board are 3 years, maybe it's every 3 years. I would love to see us get more metric based, as well as have an expectation that, we're going to see.
Absolutely. That's a discussion we could have at our next meeting. Thanks. Yeah.
Sounds good. Any other board questions? Andy?
Just a comment that it is on the website.
Okay, perfect.
Open seat.
Perfect. So with no other questions from the board, I'll open it up to comments or questions from members of the public. And if you're online, you can raise your hand by clicking raise hand in the lower center. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. Okay, not seeing any hands. Chief and Gwendolyn, thank you very much to you and the Police Community Advisory Board.
Thank you.
Thanks, yes.
And moving along to item 6C, discussion with Chittenden Solid Waste District. Sarah Reeves is here online, I believe I saw. And Mr. Nye is here with us in the flesh.
Great. Thank you very much. As is mentioned, Madam Chair, my name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for Chittenden Solid Waste District. And CSWD is a municipality that was created back in 1987 to manage solid waste mandates from the state, legislated by the state. And we are governed by a volunteer board of commissioners on serving commissioner from Essex. And as a reminder, our mission is to reduce and manage the solid waste that is generated within Chittenden County in an environmentally sound, efficient, effective, and economical manner. And I was asked tonight to give a brief overview of our fiscal 25 annual report. To be clear, this is the mini version. The full version will be issued in February once we've completed our audits of our fiscal 25 year. So the numbers here are audited, and the report that you'll be getting in February will just be a little more robust. But this is one that some of our member towns have asked for purposes like this. So I will kick it off first and foremost to say the importance of me being here, and thank you for asking me to come, is to officially let you know that in our budget that we are proposing for fiscal 27, we are not budgeting any municipal assessments. So again, you will not be receiving a bill from CSWD. And I also want to remind a number of towns that CSWD does have a fund, a community cleanup fund, that is money for each of our communities, our 18 communities, to use locally within your town for different types of activities related to waste reduction, for cleanup. And Essex has $7,500 each year. And so that money kicks in on July 1 with our full allotment to use each year. It doesn't carry over, but you can use $7,500 each fiscal year. And it is a reimbursement program. So if you're budgeting, I'm talking about your budgets around this time, you may want to consider budgeting a portion or all $7,500 for a project to be decided. It could be through the Conservation Commission. It could be any number of different waste reduction projects. And then you would talk to Alan about that project. The select board would have to approve the use of the funds. The project would happen. You would submit the invoice for reimbursement to us, and then we would reimburse you according to the use of your fund. So I want to make sure that I reminded folks about that at the time that they're developing a budget. So in our mini annual report that was in your packet, again, the unaudited financials show that in fiscal 25, CSWD generated just shy of $19 million in total revenues. That was significantly over budget, and that was due in large part to receiving a grant from Vermont Agency of Natural Resources to help us in the construction of our new materials recycling facility in Williston. We also were able to sell one of the properties that we owned in Burlington, so that also helps boost that number. And even more importantly, our compost facilities, our organics recycling facility, home of Green Mountain Compost, and our drop-off centers both ended the year on a positive net operating income. So those factors all contributed to generating a larger than budgeted revenue number for fiscal 25. We also do surveys, and we do household surveys, and we do produce a waste diversion report each year. So we don't do the survey each year. That tends to be every other year or every third year. So it's interesting hearing that you all are also doing more regular surveys. Our waste diversion report for fiscal 25 shows that in general, waste was up. So the amount generated during that period was up. However, also up was the amount of waste diverted from the landfill. So when we talk about waste diversion, we're talking about all the efforts that Jimmy County residents and businesses take to keep material out of the landfill. So that amount increased, which was great. Jimmy County's overall municipal solid waste diversion rate was just shy of 55%, which is higher than the state's overall diversion rate, which is around 51%. And we do continue to increase that diversion rate as we go through the years. Speaking back of the materials recycling facility, we have been in the planning stages for that facility for about 7 or 8 years now. We did have to purchase a new piece of property. We have property on Redmond Road in Williston that, due to the back-to-back years of excessive rain, had reverted back to a mosaic wetland. So we purchased property further down Redmond Road, so still keeping in that same location. And that is what the grant from A&R was used for. And the highlights in our fiscal 26 report will be that we have broken ground on that facility. So we are currently clearing. We had the groundbreaking event about a week and a half ago, just before Thanksgiving. So we're very excited to be moving forward with that, and we hope to fully commission that facility in around January of 2027. That's quite well, but we're very thankful for everyone's support in helping us to reach this milestone. Also in fiscal 25, we implemented a new contamination policy at our compost facility, and that was aimed at giving haulers a tool they could use to communicate back to their customers to help them clean up the food scraps stream in particular. And so what we ended up doing was implementing this policy and being able to provide haulers day of or within 24-hour feedback on their loads, so that if there was contamination of a significant amount, we could show them. We have photographs of the items. They would be able to then go back to where they collected on that route, take a look at that route, and help to identify their customers that may have been putting contamination, usually unknown, in their loads, and then be able to work with those customers on cleaning up the material. And that new policy has been extremely effective in helping us to create a much cleaner stream of food scraps, which helps to make our process more effective and more economical. We also added some hours to our drop-off center in Burlington, and so now the only drop-off center in our group of 6 that is not on the same 5-day, 8 to 3:30 schedule and still remains Heinsberg, only allowed to operate 2 days a week. But everywhere else, it's Tuesday to Saturday, 8 to 3. And again, we did do a household survey this last fiscal year, and we had a lot of respondents, which was phenomenal. And of the folks who responded, over 90% said that managing waste and doing it in environmental responsibility, environmental responsibility, and reducing waste was extremely important. So we know that our mission really resonates with folks in Chittenden County, and we see that. by the high participation rates in recycling and composting in Chipping County. One of the areas that we do need to focus on, which was pulled out in the survey, and what we're seeing from the community, is working on food scraps and keeping food scraps out of the disposed materials. So food scraps are banned from the landfill, and we are still seeing some folks putting them into the trash. It's more of a problem with commercial entities rather than residential entities. We still have great participation when people dropping food scraps off at our drop-off centers, for example, and we have a high participation rate with backyard composting, but we still have folks who are not there yet. So doing some outreach to try to help folks understand what they need to do, what they can do. We offer workshops, composting workshops, and we do a lot of education in schools. We go to businesses and we show businesses how they can incorporate food waste reduction into the workspace. But really we're looking at the higher generators, which still tend to be in the commercial space, whether it's restaurants, supermarkets, multifamily units, areas like that. So that's the survey results kind of bore out what our work plan is showing us we needed to do. We also have a new website, and so we're still kind of working out some of the kinks in the website, but if you haven't checked it out, CSWD.net, please do give us some feedback on that. And we had two really interesting events, fiscal 25, one fiscal 24. We did a battery blitz in partnership with Call to Recycle, and we like to do these kinds of competitions with our local elementary schools. They really get into it, the kids love it. And so we were able to do that, the program again with Call to Recycle as a national organization. We've been partnering with them for many, many, many years. And we, CSWD, thanks in part to all of you, won an Environmental Leadership Award for our solar eclipse glasses collection program. And little CSWD in little Vermont collected the most solar eclipse glasses of any community in the country. So we were really, really proud to be able to have facilitated that effort and some really proud the community. We'd love to have any questions. We may have board, but I may have questions.
Shannon.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for what you do. I really enjoyed the presentation as well as the memo. And thank you, Mr. Nye, for serving as our representative. A couple questions. First off, I did not know about that fund you talked about, the $7,500 for cleanup projects. I'm just curious, has Essex used that to its full extent in the past?
Yeah, we did a Christmas tree recycling thing a number of years, but I don't think Public Works has put in a request in the last couple of years. And then they did a cleanup of the stream side on Indian Brook and disposed of but it's there, and we haven't done a lot with it in Essex.
Gotcha. Well, I hope in the future we do. Now that I know about it, I'll be highlighting that for various committees and different things. I think it's a great opportunity and something nice to hear you're doing. I'm curious about the comparison of your numbers in the survey, talking about people saying, yes, I compost my backyard and different things, versus what you're actually seeing. And you mentioned a little bit that you're still seeing organic material in trash. Is it to the extent you expected? Is the survey accurate, or are people kind of giving them a better grade than they're doing?
Well, the interesting thing is that we see strong participation in composting activities, whether it's drop-off or backyard, from homeowners, from residents. We're seeing not the numbers of participation that we would like to see from businesses. And admittedly, it's more difficult for businesses to get that program underway, which is why we have folks on staff who, that's all they do, is to assist businesses with creating a program and putting a program, making sure people in the business community actually understand and know that they do need to divert this material. So really the opportunity is with both schools. Elementary schools tend to do a really good job. As it gets to middle school and high school, it tends to kind of wane off a little bit. But the opportunity really is in the business sector So we focus a lot in that area. We also do a lot of work with events, and I want to give a shout out to, and actually this needs to be the junction, but to the Champlain Valley Expo has really done a lot of work at improving their program, particularly around fair, and they've made huge strides in improving their program with their vendors, and it was really noticeable in this last year's fair. So, and it's a huge job. It's a massive undertaking, and that's why I think some businesses just don't even really know where to start. So we do a lot of our outreach is to the business community. We work, with chambers of commerce. We are working, for example, with the Church Street Marketplace folks. We work with UVM. We work with St. Mike's. We try to get out to where we can find the largest amount of impact in kind of a small area where it's workable. But there are over 7,000 businesses in Chipping Valley, and so it's taking time to get to each every one. So it's great to have you all asking me these questions, because then you can also help spread the word locally that if businesses are looking for help, looking for assistance, we are a great resource, and we can come and give personalized assistance in creating a program.
Other board questions? Andy.
Hi, Sarah. I've asked you this question, I think, every time I've seen you. I've got two questions. One I think you got a preview of. The other one you've heard before, of course. We have many tractor trailers that drive right down the road behind us on their way to Coventry, hauling the state's trash to the far end of the state with a huge carbon footprint. It'd be great if there was another landfill somewhere, either closer or in a different direction, so trucks would go a different way, or not quite as far. So what's the status of replacing that landfill? Or
Yes, very timely question. It's always a good question, and I do appreciate being able to talk about this every year. So, and don't stop asking the question. It is a good one. And so, as part of the state's materials management plan, this new one that they just implemented last year, they were required to initiate a stakeholder process to look at disposal capacity, landfill disposal capacity. We only have, again, the one landfill in Coventry, and it does have a finite life, and the numbers are varying as far as how long that landfill is expected to last. I've heard 17 years, I've heard 20 years. It may be less, it may be more. There's not a lot of space left up there to expand. They have another potential period of expansion that would be quite small, maybe 5 to 7 years, so it's not very large. After that, it is questionable as to where there would be an allowable area within the footprint, particularly given the proximity to the lake, so they can make up. So the state held a series of 4 meetings over the past couple of months. Those meetings are online on their website, and so you can watch the meetings. You can maybe even get a copy of the minutes. I'm not sure, but you can definitely watch the proceedings. And they had folks talking to us from Stella, from other states, from local stakeholder groups from the Northeast Bingo, and talking about what are some of the options. Nothing is decided. I think there needs to be a lot more conversation about what are some of the options for Vermont. And it's tricky here because we only have really the 2 main highways. So getting material to an interstate and then having enough space off that interstate to be able to satisfy the needs of whether it's the entire state or whether it's any component of the state. Citing that has proven to be extremely difficult. We did hear from a couple of other solid waste districts that have permitted locations on the records, and there are no plans to further develop those sites. it's an extremely difficult operation to permit, as you can imagine. Permitting, citing, can take anywhere from 8 to 12 years. So if we realistically think that we have 17 years, and it's going to take 10 to 12 years to permit something else, we have to start really engaging in that process now. So I was heartened to see that the state did start that stakeholder process early in their resource management plan process. It's a 5-year plan. So I'm glad they didn't do that in year 4. Instead, they did that in year 1. But there is a long, long way to go. I agree. And I think I've said this to you in the past as well. When it comes to solid waste management, the best practice is always to try to manage the waste as close to the source of generation as possible. First priority is to reduce the waste being generated, but then to try to manage it as close to the source of generation as you can. Chittenden County does not have a lot of room for its own land. We certainly would not have enough room for the landfill for the state with more than Chittenden County. It's extremely expensive. It's highly capital intensive. So we had this on the books years and years and years ago. We had plans for landfill years ago. Those plans are still somewhere in our archives. Again, I think permitting that would be extremely difficult. So the state is looking at it. The state has said that they do not want to operate a landfill. They don't want to own a landfill. Other states do, particularly the smaller states. That is how they manage it. Delaware, Rhode Island, that's their methodology. It comes with its own challenges when you have a state that owns them. So that is all to say that yes, the conversation is happening now. I think it would be helpful to continue to push the state to not let this drop and to continue the conversation in earnest. They're certainly open to it. But I think the leaning towards the answer at the moment is to ship Vermont's waste out of state. And that has another set of challenges, right? And the state has not yet calculated, to my knowledge, not yet calculated the cost to Vermonters of that option. So we need to really take into account the cost of constructing landfills, whether it's another large single landfill for the entire state, whether it's several regional landfills, shipping it out of state, and what are some of the other options. But the conversations I have are being held.
Where 90% of the stuff that arrives at my mailbox doesn't make it into my house. It lands in my blue bin on the way through my garage. I know you've said in the past that there's some efforts to make the senders of that recycling material responsible for paying for its disposal. Any progress there?
Yeah, so that would be it just fall under extended producer responsibility law. So we have several EPR laws in Vermont already on batteries and things. And so that would likely fall under that. It would be extended producer responsibility for paper and packaging. And many states, actually, a great handful, are working on legislation for paper and packaging EPR. There are a couple of states that have general packaging EPR laws on the books. They're working through their rulemaking right now. So California, Oregon, Minnesota, Maine, and then others have these EPR bills that are in the works, including here in the Northeast. So Vermont does have some appetite to look at that. I think we will be working much more in earnest on that topic in the next 4 years. More kind of urgently for some producer responsibility, at least interest is on mattresses and tires. So those two have kind of risen to the top for several reasons, namely that they are very expensive to manage, and they're very bulky. They take up a lot of space in the landfill. So keeping those out of the, and not just system, but the state government, keeping those materials out of the landfill through a producer responsibility program. That has a lot of, not a lot, but that has some good interest and may have some legs in the legislature in this next session and then in the next biennium. And then really up next is some producer responsibility for paper packaging. So it is on the horizon. It's not the near horizon, but it is on the horizon.
Other board questions? Seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment or public questions. Again, if you're online, you can click the raise hand button on the bottom. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. I don't see any, so Sarah and Alan, I would thank you for your time and thanks for the good work you do.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, business item 6D, consider approval of contract for Taser conducted electricity weapons. Chief, good evening.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening again. So as in the memo that what is in your packet states, the department is looking to replace the tasers that we currently have. The current versions that we have are made by Axon. They are a sole company provider for conducted electrical weapons such as this. That's the technical term for them. So we purchased those in 2019, and in doing so, when we did that, we did it under a plan to pay over the next 5 years. We're now at the point where those tasers are coming to the end of life, so we're looking to replace those. The way that we would propose to do that is to start in fiscal year 27, and this ask tonight is basically to allow us to go ahead and sign that contract after July 1st of 2026. So in the next fiscal year. So obviously that would be contingent on the full budget passing and everything. But this is a preliminary advisory thing, and also to seek approval for signing that new contract. So we'd be looking at paying for those over the next 5 years, so it'd be included in each budget over this one that's coming, that's going to be presented this week, and then the next 4 after that. And it would be a total of $137,000 to purchase, I believe it's 25 tasers, I believe it is.
26.
26, sorry. So I'm open to answering any questions you might have about that, or
Questions from the board? Ethan?
So are we talking about, sorry, I've been grilling a couple other departments before I got to yours, but
all right.
Is this in the operating budget or was this capital?
This would be coming out of operating, and I believe in discussion with the finance director and the town manager, I believe that was what we decided would be the most effective way to be able to make sure that the funding for that gets expensed out as part of the city's contract as well with the MOU with the department. And Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's something that might
reason.
fall under capital under normal circumstances, but because of our shared services agreement with Essex Junction, where they pay roughly half the cost of police expenses, we funnel this through we would funnel this through the operating budget. It would become an operating expense over those 5 years. We would still offset it. At least in fiscal 27, it's proposed to be offset with fund balance revenue. Dan has a mechanism worked out where we would be paying our roughly 50% towards his cost. The city would pay their roughly 50%.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions, Shannon?
Obviously, I think this is a necessary cost. Having non-lethal tools at your disposal is very important.
Right.
I was just a little surprised at the huge jump over 6 years.
Yep.
I know that in the detail about the cost breakdown, you kind of talk about how we there's a training suit, there's, you know, additional distances and, you know, enhancements. Is there a longer warranty period for this new product that's not included in the memo?
I believe it's about the warranty period is the same as what it's for, which is the contract is for, which is 5 years, I believe. The reason for the increases are a couple things. First is the tasers themselves are twice as expensive now as they were 5 years ago. As I said, Axon is a sole provider of this and has done everything they can to ensure that. So they know what they have, and therefore they set their prices accordingly. The other thing is, as you pointed out, this contract does come with providing training cartridges for the actual tasers, which right now we are paying for extra, as well as duty cartridges, which are different. Duty cartridges as well will be provided under this contract as well, which we're currently having to pay for as extras, along with that training suit you're talking about, right?
The 26 number, you know, basically gives a taser per officer on staff. I know, does that account for the buffer of unfilled positions, or should we be getting more in case we ever filled those positions?
It basically accounts for all of the, if we were to fill every unfilled position, currently we're at 31 officers authorized. If we were to fill that completely, this would allow us to issue one to everyone who is necessary. So someone like myself, I don't carry a taser. I'm not on patrol, so I don't carry one. The lieutenant doesn't carry one, and a few of our detectives, because they're not on patrol, don't carry one either. So, so all of the people who are in uniform would have a taser issued to them. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know whether I missed the answer to the question, but is the life expectancy, are they anticipated to last longer, even though the contract is for the same length of time?
I would guess, based on their history, it's probably going to be about 6 years before these will again need to be replaced. There's always a new model, and they work off the same kind of business model as what any other computer company would, where we're not going to support that model after a period of time. So that's what we're facing.
Familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And sorry if I missed the answer to that initially.
No, that's it.
Other board questions, Ethan?
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm scratching my chin.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I'm yelling in the microphone. Is there any sub-public safety forces or anything? Is there any resale on this equipment, the used equipment?
To resell the old ones or something like that.
Is there a trade-in, anything?
Yeah, there is a trade-in, and I think I indicated in here between $4,000 and $6,000 is what we would get for those tasers. I want to say they give us, for the 26 that we have, I think they give us like $150, $200, something like that per taser. And then, yeah, we kind of, they don't even expect you to ship them back. The agreement is that we just don't want them, don't use them, don't give them to anybody else. But
throw them away.
Basically, yeah, destroy them. Yeah.
And what would be the method of disposal?
We would probably hold on to them for a little bit, just in case we needed a spare or something like that. But ultimately, the cartridges would run out, and we wouldn't be able to use them anymore. And I don't know. I haven't really figured out how we would destroy them. Maybe with a hammer, maybe. Mm-hmm. Something like that, because they're essentially made out of polycarbonate plastic, right. So they're tough, but they could be destroyed. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Andy, have a question?
Just a chin scratch.
Scratch my chin.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand the mechanics of this. Is that you pay the $137 up front, and they give you all the stuff, and then they're willing to take a payment over a period of 5 years? Is there an interest?
No, there is no interest involved in it. And what it basically, to start the contract, would be the first payment of $29,000. So your first payment upon signing the contract, you make that payment, and then they supply all of the equipment to you, and then you just make payments throughout the period after that.
Okay.
There is no interest period. Yep.
That's a good deal. There's not many places that do that.
Yeah, and you know, certainly I didn't mean to disparage Axon by any means, because they understand what they have, right? They are a big company now, and they do understand what they have, but they also understand who they're selling these to, and that then they understand how budgets work, and that towns and cities might not be able to come up with $137,000 all up front. So
Yeah.
they've been working with these kinds of things for a while, right?
Seeing no.
I just have one last quick clarification. But so it's 4,000 to 6,000 for all. How many units do we have right now?
I think we have 26.
We
right
have
now.
26
Yep.
right now, and that's what they would give for the total price.
Correct.
And maybe I'm totally wrong and don't have any direction on this, but is it possible that there's security forces out there that may buy the lot with all the cartridges that we have, or is there a law prohibiting?
Doubtful that we could do that we could actually sell them to anyone else. Axon usually has some type of an agreement. I'd have to look in the current contract that we have when we purchase these, that they wouldn't be able to be sold to another agency or something like that. I'd have to look at that though.
Okay.
But if I had to
Just
guess,
food for thought,
I
didn't see the 4,000 to 6,000. I guess any credit's better than none.
Yeah, and the only reason I say that is I personally have not heard of another agency selling their tasers to another group. I just have not.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Seeing no other board questions, quick pause. I'll open it up to public comments, public questions. Again, if you're online, raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Ethan.
I move that the select board give approval for the manager and or chief of police to carry out a contract as outlined above with Axon Incorporated to begin in future year 27.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Is there any discussion, Shannon?
Shouldn't this be preliminary approval because of the preamble that the chief said about this has to be after the budget passes and different things, so we can't necessarily give approval?
I think the request is to approve the contract. The money for the budget would take part in the budgeting process.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that we have clauses in the contract for termination, cancellation.
We would not sign the contract until July 1st, until after we know that the budget has passed.
Okay.
Right.
So this is us giving our stamp of approval pending
that. Okay.
Pending it going through the budgeting process. Thank you for that clarification. Is that?
That's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make sure it was clear.
Okay. Any other final discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Next up is body cameras and in-car cameras.
And even more technology to talk to you about. So currently, the department owns, I believe we have 12 in-car cameras, and we have 12 body cameras that each officer, when they're working, wears on their body or in the car that they're working in. Those two pieces of technology work together by combining together into one solid video, into one video piece that has several different views in it. The body camera can activate the camera in the car and vice versa. So it's pretty involved technology. We started with in-car cameras back when I started. We had a camera, if you remember the ones that go up onto your shoulder, if anybody remembers those, we had one of those mounted to the top of the car, in the car, and you couldn't actually see out that right side of the car. It was dangerous back then. But thankfully we've come a lot farther now, and our cameras are very good. And our officers depend on the cameras every single day for what they do. They use them to write their reports. They use them to protect themselves against complaints, and we use them as a department to ensure that we're doing the right things. So back in 2019, we started with a contract for body cameras, and since then we've had a contract with Motorola over that period of time which every year we've been paying and putting in the budget $16,000 for payment for storage of video. And we currently are in that same contract. What we would be looking for now is to end that current contract and then start a new contract with Motorola that would supply us with new body cameras and new in-car cameras. The current body cameras we have, as I said, are 5 years old. They're getting, because they're not individually issued to an officer, they get shared amongst all the officers. So we're finding that some of the batteries go dead. We're finding that some of the buttons on them are starting to not work. So we've had to send them back for repairs. So we originally had to buy those cameras up front, and then we've just been paying for the storage. What we're looking for now is to be able to enter into this contract that would provide us with the actual body cameras, in-car cameras, and allow us to still have the storage contract with Motorola. So that's basically what we're looking to do. That would begin, however, unlike the other one we just talked about, that would begin in this budget year, because we do have $16,000 budgeted for in-car cameras and body cameras this year. We would have to add, as you see in the estimate, we would have to add about $20,000, a little over $20,000 to what we have budgeted this year to be able to start that contract, and then we'd be looking at approximately $5,000 more each year for the next, or budgeting at $5,000 more each year for the next 4 years for that contract.
Ethan.
I did read this one, and I didn't get to dig into the budget more, but I'm gonna get there because we're gonna be there all day Friday. But so when I was reading this, the only problem that I have with the fund balance deal for this first year is that that's gonna come solely from the town, because when I know that we're changing from 10 to 12% on vacancies. So yes, there's fund balance this year, which unfortunately we didn't fill positions, but seems to be the new normal of our dwelling youth going into the force. But my point here is that the $20,143 is going to have to come directly from the town taxpayer, because once the police department generates fund balance, the fund balance is split to the two towns and sent back, and it's not committed. You can't commit the city to pay their fund balance back to the police department.
Sure.
So this is like a conversation for Friday, and I'm all about supporting this, but I'm not so certain that taking $20,000 from the town of Essex to pay for something that I'd have to see the reimbursement method. Yeah.
So we talked about this earlier today. So the mechanism would be the fund balance for the town's portion, which would be half of the number you see in the memo.
The 10,000.
So it would be an operating expense, just like any operating expense. Half of it would have been covered from the fund balance transfer revenue, and then the other half would be covered by the city through the normal practice.
But how do you make them pay for it if it's not in the approved budget from last year?
Because the chief could purchase it using the budget that he has now, and it would just be overspent.
Okay, so you have enough in the budget to cover the 36,800?
Yes, we should have that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't catch that part in here.
Right. No,
because in my mind, I'm like, we're losing $20,000, and they don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, fair point.
Right?
Yeah, like she's saying, we would have that funding in our
current budget.
I guess I used the wrong term. It would be expected. When I said fund balance, it would be an expected overage that we would have. Yeah.
And so we'll get to fund balance recommendations at a later time. We can talk more about that. But I just wanted to note that in the police budget that you're looking at for Friday, there's a similar mechanism where we're using, the intention is to offset any of the costs appropriately.
Right.
So when you look at the budget, you'll see a number that's similar to that.
But the budget we approved last year, that has the $36,823. There's enough room in equipment to make that purchase.
My understanding is we budgeted $16,000, and the chief would forego other things to make up that difference if the fund
within the
balance
operating
recommendation
budget
wasn't
from
approved.
what was already approved.
Right.
And then going forward, we'll
You should see the number
Okay.
that the chief
Okay.
gave you earlier in that budget.
That
Yeah. Does that,
answers all of my
Great.
concern. Right.
perfect.
Andy, I
But
saw
it
your
brings up a
hand.
question for Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Saw your hand.
our charter gives the manager the authority to shift line item balances within a department. And so I'm wondering if this is money that's already in the budget that will, if we don't spend it, be left over in the end and become fund balance. Doesn't the manager have the authority to transfer those without them becoming fund balance, and then it becomes an expense that just goes with the, you know, it just gets dealt with like a normal expense would. So I'm wondering, I don't want to, I'm wondering if there's, you know, do we need to use the, you know, if we use the phrase fund balance, in our minds we're thinking, okay, we're going to decide at some point in the future how to allocate fund balance dollars.
Yes.
If this money is already in the police department's budget, the manager has the authority from our charter to transfer funds between line items within a department. So you could do that without ever calling it fund balance and not go through the other major discussion we have about fund balance, because I don't think it isn't fund balance at that point. It's just money that's been reallocated with the manager's authority, and that's so. I was also confused by this thing about calling it fund balance, because again, that is a thing that we do, is decide where that goes. But if it's already spent, it doesn't become fund balance.
Can I or do you? I just wanted to note, we are using the fund balance term intentionally. And so what we're hoping to present to you when we present fund balance recommendations is one for fiscal year 25 monies to offset this startup cost. So the chief has the money in his budget. He would have to forego doing something else to pay that. And we just want to offset that charge rather than have the budget have to absorb that unanticipated expense. We can talk more about that and whether that's the right way to do it.
Because I'm a little shaky on the, we'll only spend 52% of it, and then the city's gonna somehow pay the other piece of it. And I think it's just once it becomes an expense, then yeah, I think it goes against the books again. You know, my understanding of how the agreement works is we level up in the quarter at the first quarter after the end of the fiscal year with regard to fund balance. If there is police department fund balance, the next bill that the city gets is lowered by the amount of their portion of the fund balance. But if we've spent it in the previous year, that money won't actually become fund balance in that regard. So I don't know if it would be, you could uncomplicate it by just moving the money out of another line item. But I think what Karen said is you want to take $20,000 from general fund balance and pay for this, not a shift within departments. So
That's what Karen's saying, but I think that if you want to move ahead with the money that has been budgeted, and we will see whether, depending on vacancies or other underspending in certain areas, do we come in with the budgeted amount or below anyways? Or if we overspend, we'll have to deal with the overspend at the end of the fiscal year. Either way, we do quarterly true-ups with the city, so that there's not a big bill one way or the other at the end of it. But we do.
It is quarterly.
They do quarterly payments, so we're keeping track of where we should be. I'm okay with moving ahead with what's in the budget. Chief, if you think this is going to push you over by $20,000,
I don't. Honestly, I do not.
Yeah, so I think we could move ahead with what's in the budget. See where we land at the end of the year.
Yeah, otherwise, I think we'd have to word the motion to say pending fund balance approval, because we haven't done that yet. Just similar to what you were saying before on the.
Yeah.
Ethan?
I don't have the number perfect in my head right now. I've been looking at all the departments to figure out, but do you have roughly Q1 salary? I think it was like 18%.
I don't have that.
I had just had it,
Don't.
but I'm just gonna ask Andy a question real quick. Can within $40,000 can he transfer 36,000 from salary to equipment with no questions? Is that within the purchasing and the charter?
My understanding that the charter gives the manager authority to shift
That's-
line items within a department to department. Yes, the select board for it. You can't shift it from another department, but within the police department, it's fully his authority to shift money around.
And under 40,000 for a purchase.
Any amount.
Yeah, any amount.
Yeah, so I asked department heads to make sure that their overall budget comes in at or below what they're budgeted for. And so, yeah, if the police have, what do you have, 5 or 6 different police budgets, but within each of those, there's
Right.
any number of lines, and as long as the overall police budget is coming in at the total amount, I'm okay.
Okay.
And the charter allows the manager to shift between departmental budgets, or sorry, excuse me, within departmental budgets.
Yeah. I think that's the clean and less confusing way for a lot of people to try to explain to them why we're spending 20,000 out of fund balance and sending the city back $75,000. We're only getting 55 and buying some body cams.
I mean, honestly, I guess in my mind as I was thinking about this, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that we are going to have an excess in salaries in this current year, and that's kind of where it was going to be pulled from.
We just want to make them pay for it also.
Yeah, I understand.
Kendall had his.
So Andy, go ahead. I was just going to expand, is there any benefit, since we know we're going to have a fund balance from the police, to actually spend more than the 36,000 to lower the future payments? Since we constantly hear that eventually we're going to be fully staffed and not have fund balances to cover expenses like this. Just curious.
My 2 cents is that we're less than halfway through the fiscal year, and I'd hate to make decisions based on what we think we're at, and I'd rather wait until the end of the year comes through and see where we land a year from now. Well, less than a year from now, but once the audit's wrapping up a year from now.
Andy, your hand was up earlier.
Yeah, I've just remembered, I don't know why I didn't remember this, is that when we're talking about fund balance, we're talking about FY25 fund balance, money we already have in our pocket, rather than, okay, I'm going to retract what I said before, and I think it's a better idea, as long as we have a way to make sure that the city pays their share, that we use money we already have in our pocket rather than short his budget. I've turned around on that. But again, it's the whole question of when do you want to sign this contract, because we haven't agreed on fund balance assignments yet. When do you want to sign the contract?
Very soon.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Can I ask? The memo doesn't speak to funding. Does it need to? The recommendation, I'm sorry, I said memo. I meant it just says enter into the contract. Where the money come from is important, but could be a detail that's figured out later. Just offering that.
True. Shannon's hand went up.
I was just
earlier.
going to build off of Kendall's thing, but I think Greg put the kibosh on that.
Okay. Ethan?
I was just gonna, be the bear in the room and say that Q1 is over. Public Works is at 20%. Fire Department's at 14%. I'm talking just salary line items. Public Works is 20. Fire Department was 14. The police was like 18-ish. It was just over 18.6. So those quarters are over. Q2 is budgeted how the chief made his budget for the rest of the year. You're not gonna regain any. I know we're not gonna figure out how we spend, but just keep in your mind that you're not gonna regain a loss in underspending. Am I wrong about that? And unless we completely filled every position by the mid of the year, which is going to be, it'd be what, March 1st? So by March 1st, you'd have to fill every position and run them out with full benefits and vacation and everything else by the end in those 6 months to even come close to matching what we've budgeted, which is why the future year's recommendation from staff is to lower another 2% in our just food for thought.
Yep.
But I'm good.
Okay. So with that, any other discussion on the motion about entering into the contract? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to public comment. If there is any public comment, public questions. Don't see any hands online. I don't see any hands in the room, so I'll bring it back to the board. Ethan.
I'm gonna make a motion that the select board approve the manager and/or chief of police enter into a contract for body-worn cameras and in-car cameras with Motorola Solutions Incorporated. Cost as outlined above.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Andy. I like the build-up. Final discussion?
I might have the suggestion that the motion be amended to eliminate the as outlined above, so that it's just a contract.
I specifically said cost, so I only included the 5-year cost plan. I did not include any funding in my wording. Just if that's helpful. I added the word cost. It's not actually in their memo.
Yeah, okay, just as long as it's not in the memo.
Because I don't approve of the funding plan. But I approve of the purchase.
That's all.
Kendall?
If that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you again.
Thanks,
Much
Chief.
appreciated.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda, consider adoption of the Keystone Trail Connectivity Project Plan.
That's great.
All right.
The more the merrier.
I'll move the mic over here. Let's share for a second. Hello, everybody. I'm Kent from the Community Development Department, and I'm joined here with Adam from Fellowship of the Wheel, and Carolyn and Drew from CRO Planning and Design, and we are presenting to you the plan that the consultant team has been working on for the last year or so. The Keystone Trail Connectivity Project Plan is what we've been calling it. It's funded with VORAC funding, so you've maybe heard the word VORAC in there also. It's all a mouthful, however you say it. About 2 years ago, at the beginning of December, is when we first got approval to apply for the grant funding, and then it was awarded in early 2024. This project began in earnest around August of 24, and over the last year or so, we've had a variety of public meetings. We have an advisory group made up of a broad range of stakeholders from VTrans and the Health Department and Local Motion and the Planning Commission, Conservation and Trails Committee, and others, to be able to they've been meeting about once every 2 months to have check-in times, to make sure that we're getting the information from the public that we need, and then we're compiling it in the plan that reflects back to the public what they wanted to see in the plan. And now we have that all packaged together as a plan with a whole bunch of appendices that go with it. And the intention is this will now be provided to the town that we can use to make future decisions about what we'd like to do. There are some short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans, a whole bunch of different items that can be done. We don't have to decide at this point what, if anything, we decide to do. Some of it is calling for more planning efforts, like there's some work along 289 that seems really promising, but that requires a considerable more consideration of that before we could make a decision on what to do. Some of the things are pretty straightforward, like just trying to delineate where the town has existing trails on our own property. So something like that is pretty low-hanging fruit, although it does still take an effort to do it. So there's a whole range of different projects. So this particular phase of putting the plan together, this effort and this grant wraps up at the end of the month, so the consultants can show you what we have. And then the next step after that would be for the town to digest what's in the plan and try to come up with some process of how to figure out what to do next that makes sense over a period of time. So I'd like to let them present a presentation that goes along with the plan. The plan's considerably longer document, but there's just a brief presentation that does a high-level overview.
Thanks, Ken. And thank you for sharing your screen. I was like, how am I going to do this? So thank you. I'm Carolyn Lawrence. I was like, are we related? Totally a joke. Anyways, nice to meet you guys. We are with Zero Planning Design, and we worked with Adam from Fellowship of the Wheel with a bunch of other partners on this project, as Kent said. It has been such a fun year working on this project. We're excited to share some of the results with you. So we could scroll. Thank you. So quick agenda. We're just going to run through the project team.
Sorry, one too fast.
You are good. And then we'll dive into the project process quickly, and then we'll spend the meat of the conversation on the recommendations. Please feel free to chime in with questions at any time. Here's a cute photo of us during an October site visit last year. The foliage was great that day. All right, cool. So as I said, there's a big effort. So CRO Planning and Design, we kind of kept the group together, and then Fellowship of the Wheel helped us out since they have really great boots on the ground knowledge about the trails here. We worked with I'd Ride. Knight is a really respected trail builder that works here in Vermont and all over the East Coast, and maybe even more now. Airwood Environmental is a local firm that does a really great job of assessing like ecology, natural communities, and wildlife corridors and all that stuff. So they were a great partner to have on the team for this project. We also worked with Stantec Engineering for all the fancy 289 like civil engineering stuff that we would have needed, and then Common Ground Consulting, Larissa is a specialist in scenario planning, so just kind of help us figure out like what are the features that this project could happen and how do we deal with them.
You could think about different experts in connectivity. There's habitat and ecological connectivity, active transportation and bike ped, and that's where Stantec showed up, and then trails and recreation connectivity all kind of merging in this plan. I think just calling out Fellowship of the Wheel, both helping to go after the grant with Kent to kind of help envision this project and helping to manage some of the trails in town at Saxon Hill. So they were part of our consultant team, kind of helping us think about the planning and design of the trails, but they're also here every day with you all to help manage those trails. So Adam will be in town after the consultant team is gone, but also was part of the paid consultant team for the project too, to make sure we're kind of factoring that in.
But also Drew and I live in Burlington, and we will be here all the time.
We will also be riding your trails. We had go ahead. A great advisory group.
Yeah, huge amount of people here. I will not read all the names just in the interest of time, but we are really grateful to this group of people for joining us for the bi-monthly meetings that we had just to get their advice and input on the project process, the like public input phase, the draft recommendations. It was really cool to see representation from so many different walks of life to help out with this project. Cool, so diving into the process. We did this concurrently with the active transportation plan, which I'm sure you guys will be hearing about really soon since they were on a similar timeline. But Tool Design is the civil engineering firm that did the ATP. And it kind of worked pretty well because there were like different, I mean, I feel like our Keystone Trail project had elements of active transportation when we think about like connectivity and like bicycle pedestrian stuff. But Tool was really focused on like sidewalks and bike lanes, where we were more focused on like trails. That's like my summary of this big Venn diagram. And
importantly, the Keystone Trail, I think Greg came up with the idea that this is the Keystone area or the Keystone Trail system that would connect the town, but it is a smaller area than the whole town. It's between Essex Center and the Essex Experience to Saxon Hill. So you could think of it in that 289 corridor. It includes Sand Hill, and all of the kind of neighborhoods, the schools kind of in between Essex Town Center and Saxon Hill. And so the transportation plan was townwide, and so we didn't want to ask the public about trails and all these different planning processes. So Kent had us get together and we engaged the public around both plans at the same time.
Sweet. So just quick high-level view of the task that this was divided up into. We started putting together the advisory group, task 1. Public engagement was some surveys, some in-person events. We worked with all those partners to do existing conditions analysis. Arrowwood focused on the habitat connectivity analysis. We did the scenario planning with Larissa. The trail system expansion and connectivity analysis was largely Adam and Knight. They were to run around the woods and look at all the trails that were in the project area. And then they also worked together for the soft surface and recreational trail design. And then Stan Tech led the active transportation and engineering design phase of this project. And then CRO, we kind of wrapped everything all up together into the implementation plan and the plan document itself.
I think most of those tasks are pretty self-explanatory, but just the scenario planning, there we were looking at uncertainty and land ownership. VTrans owns a lot of the land in this corridor. The school district does. Saxon Hill also involves a couple landowners, including the town. And so the scenario planning looked at uncertainty with land ownership and with funding for trail maintenance. And so that was trying to envision what would happen under various scenarios with those uncertainties. And so we looked for solutions that would apply under all future scenarios. If funding is great, if funding isn't great, if you're doing the same thing under both scenarios, that became an action that would really rise to the top.
We have a whole slide dedicated to that later.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
You're good. Cool. So just quick public engagement summary here. So we had the public visioning open house event in February, which around 40 people came, which was great. And then an amazing 322 responses to the survey. And then we had a second open house event and a second survey that focused on the community priorities that presented the draft recommendations of the plan to figure out which recommendations people in the town wanted us to move forward with first. So we only had 10 people come to that one. There was a big school event that night, I believe, because the parking lot was crazy full. But we still had 250 responses to the survey, which is great. And just some quick key takeaways. Recreation rose to the top as a main reason that people were excited about expanded trail network that was more interconnected in the project area. Connecting to residential neighborhoods and schools also came in highly ranked as a priority. And then the biggest concerns that came out of this expanded trail network was habitat damage and off-leash dogs. So it was super great that there was a wildlife corridor protection analysis component to this project because people are thinking about that. Thank you for clicking the slides. I appreciate you. So we kind of mentioned this in the task here, but the analysis, the deeper analysis slide here is the trail connectivity and sustainability, accessibility improvements. So again, Knight and Adam kind of led that effort there, and they inventoried all the existing trails within the project area on town-owned land and on not town-owned land, just to figure out what's out there and what's the low-hanging fruit, what are the opportunities present. Then Stan Tech led that active transportation again. They really did focus on a longitudinal trail feasibility along 289, and they assessed an at-grade crossing, a bridge, or a under the ground culvert crossing exploration. And then Arrowwood really focused on the wildlife habitat and ecosystem connectivity, as I mentioned before. I just want to point out that this, Kent mentioned this before, but this was kind of building on a 2003 study that was done in the town, and it also looked at potential trail crossings of 289, so it felt exciting to kind of bring that back up and see what can still happen today.
We'll talk a little bit about this in the recommendations, but we looked at habitat and wildlife crossing of 289 as well as human crossing across 289, so both. And there are opportunities if you look to solve both things, you might have more opportunities for grants. You could leverage a wildlife crossing grant, for example, with match it with a bike ped grant. You could potentially bring more money by combining those two things together.
Sweet. Cool. So as Drew alluded to, we had our scenario planning workshop here in this room. It was super great. And yeah, we kind of came up with these 4 futures. They have quirky names that the focus groups came up with, but yeah, I was just kind of figure out okay, what happens if there's no money? What happens if there's no town support? And we kind of came up with these different needs that would hold true across all futures that were possible. So again, I don't want to bore you with all of these things that we found, but strong communication, accurate data, priority lands that the town should maybe consider acquiring. And then well-planned trail network, all this fun stuff. It was helpful to have these bullets in mind as we move forward with the rest of the project to figure out like what recommendations are feasible and what is going to be most important. Cool. So after we did all of that analysis and stuff, we came up with these recommendations. This is a very high-level summary of what's all in the plan document, so I would encourage you to read it if you haven't already. But we kind of organized them into a couple of different buckets, the first being soft surface trail design and construction recommendations. So this largely came out of Knight's report. So he and Adam, again, were in the woods inventorying all those trails and looking at, like, is this grade sustainable from like an accessibility standpoint, but also an erosion and like climate sustainability standpoint, and like what reroutes should happen to make the trail more accessible, what bridges need to be rebuilt, are there certain connectivity points within the neighborhoods that make sense to prioritize, and build a kiosk so that people can be oriented when they're using the system. So that his full report is included in the appendix of the plan. But these recommendations came out of that, so you'll see that there's like 14 trail reroutes, 9 bridges, 11 kiosks, and then the thing that we think could be really beneficial for the connectivity piece is the main thoroughfare trail to serve as like the artery of the network, and then remembering that the public felt really strongly about like recreation as a reason they're excited for this expanded network, is maybe consider in the future designing mountain bike optimized like trail spurs off the main thoroughfare trail to provide that recreational value.
Right now, there's existing trails in Sandhill Park, on the Matthew Town Forest, and on some of the private lands, the school district lands. They're all kind of connected. In some cases, they're old logging roads where some parts of those old logging roads are great trails. Some of them are terrible. And so this is looking at rerouting those places where it's terrible. One of the issues was bridges, and I know, Adam, you could probably speak to this as well, but there is some bridges you can see in this picture that are out there. Some of them are not quite up to standard, or sometimes there's not enough of the bridging needed. And so this is really looking at improving this informal trail system that's kind of built up over old logging roads and just goat paths that people have used over time. And this would make it more sustainable and open it up to a lot wider range of people could start to use these trails. People with jogging strollers, people maybe even with adaptive equipment. Right now we did see high school jogging or cross country using the trails, and so they're being used by the neighborhood, by the school, but this would make it a lot more accessible to everyone.
And we kind of came up with some like trail typologies and stuff that should have been updated to shared use path, not necessarily bike path. But like this is where Stantec's work came into. Like we thought that having like a paved, like proper shared use path along 289 would really help facilitate that connectivity between the schools, the neighborhoods, and like the shopping centers, which was a focal point of this project.
You could think about it a little bit like the 127 bike path in Burlington, where it goes along that limited use highway. It would actually be quite a bit farther from the highway, so it would be could be a lot more separated, both by grade. It could be up kind of on some of the berms that are along that corridor, if you know the 289 corridor, and quite a bit further away from the highway than the 127 bike path, but it'd be similar to that in kind of the way it would work with the highway.
So this is one trail typology y'all could consider as part of the system. And the second one is multi-use natural surface trail. So we were talking about that like main thoroughfare, like artery trail, and this was kind of what we had in mind for that. So maybe this is something that like could maybe be like plowed and used in the winter, and it also accommodates like other modes of transportation other than just like a mountain bike or feet. So just again, like being able to have like a stroller, like kids can use it to get to and from school, all that fun stuff.
And we might think of this as being something that you could ride a bike over. The bridges wouldn't have, big steps and things like that to get up and on. You could roll it, but it wouldn't be as much of a mountain biking trail with berms and jumps and things like that. It would be more of a running, jogging. You could also bike on it, but it wouldn't be a mountain bike trail specifically.
And then the third typology we were thinking about was like, should the town decide to pursue like additional recreation infrastructure in the form of like mountain bike or other user trails off the main thoroughfare trail, they could pursue these mountain biking trails, which are, have the berms, mountain bike optimized, so like trail runners can still use them, but like it would just be a more fun experience for a mountain biker.
You use the term spurs off of the main thing. Is that what you've referenced there?
Yeah, right now the system does have kind of a main path, but it's not signed or any different than any of the side paths. We did find some of those just need to get closed down, either from habitat or from their alignment, and they're redundant. But there is opportunities to have some really fun spurs off the main kind of connectivity route that exists today already, but could be improved.
Yeah, not to jump ahead, but obviously I was on the committee as well, so I'm very aware of this, but in your maps and different things, I love what you highlighted as to what trails you might shut down and then realign, and there's a lot of information here, so thank you.
Good, yeah.
I would also add the maps and things you see in the more detailed plan really just show the major trail alignments that need to happen to make connectivity between all of these neighborhoods, schools, trail network, Saxon Hill, and the economic center, town center area of Essex. There are no flagged or budgeted quoted trail spurs, but it is something that this project kind of sets a foundation for. If you have this connected, nicely laid out trail network, it does allow the opportunity for something down the road.
We flagged all of the trail realignments for the main artery, but we haven't kind of in the field flagged the mountain bike spurs or the additional spurs yet. But Adam can help do that in the coming years as fellowship, as the main artery gets built.
Sweet. And circling back to that 289 longitudinal trail, Stantec kind of divided their work up into like 3 recommendation categories. That they had like the longitudinal trail itself, a bicycle pedestrian crossing, and a separate crossing for wildlife. And all 3 of those like recommendations had similar steps to follow, which were conducting a scoping study to define that project, especially since VTrans would be involved, pursuing funding for design and construction, engineering design, and plan development, followed by finding the bid for the construction. Something that we recommended in the plan was like pursuing like one giant scoping study that would encompass all 3 of those components, which would be the trail and both crossings. So
importantly, there are natural surface trails in this corridor right now that people use, and trails from town lead right to these trails on VTrans land, but they're not formally recognized by VTrans. So there are trails out there along 289 up on those berms that you can hike on and walk on today. But in order to do anything on VTrans land, you have to do the scoping study next. So even to kind of improve some of those natural surface trails that are already there today, kind of created by users, you have to go through some additional steps with VTrans. I think Chittenden County Regional Planning was really encouraged. Like they were thinking VTrans was going to say, don't even talk about this. And VTrans wasn't like 2 thumbs up, but what we kept saying was they didn't say thumbs down. So VTrans saying this is actually a really good sign, because they kind of did this to us. And so that means you can keep going into a scoping study. Just wanted to put it out there that there are trails out there now, but it does require, in order to do work on them of any kind, you have to do the scoping study.
Can I ask a question now?
Please.
It's about the 289. There's also a gas line that runs along there. And I know the gas company is responsible for maintaining the vegetation. Is that going to interfere with anything that we might want to do there, or make just complicated or not? Do you have any experience with the gas company?
In the study, we had a meeting where we talked with all the partners, and Stantec did mention that it's not unfeasible to do that.
Okay.
Because that was one of my first questions too. Was like how does this integrate with?
You do need to sign it if you. I think it might be. It's a little bit funky ownership right there with the Winooski Valley Parks District. It might be in the town of Essex, but the Woodside Natural Area does have a gas line that's right there as well. And it can be confusing because it looks like a trail corridor. It's cleared, but there's a fair amount of signage. If you have them, you kind of want to. You don't want them to be right next to each other. People will look at that gas corridor and think it's a trail. And sometimes we've seen, not here in Chittenden County, but in other places, you might put a trail over a gas line if the utility's okay with that, and it takes some work and partnership there. But in this case, you would just want to sign it, and one crossing would be fine. You just want to sign it that that's a gas pipeline. And
in other communities, we've seen like MOUs with utilities for trails like this, and it's been fine. But
okay, so it's not a
deal
huge
breaker.
barrier. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and Sunny Hollow Park, another network where we help maintain in Colchester. that main thoroughfare into the network is shared with the gas line.
Great, thanks.
Ethan.
So you didn't have a lot of conversation with VTrans, is what I'm gathering?
We did. We had their statewide bike ped coordinators on the advisory committee and really engaged. And we did have them on the site visit where we talked about the culvert crossing.
The one that they're potentially sleeving and minimizing the wildlife crossing that's currently, it's in their 5-year plan. The big culvert up there, it's got some failure to it. Because they came here, and that was my concern, was that the culvert's large enough right now for deer to cross through it. But their proposed fix was to sleeve the culvert, which would minimize. So I don't know if that was brought up. They're planning on replacing that culvert currently.
That's really important. I mean,
If
the
you knew
two
that.
culverts that we were talking about, they said they were like in 40 to 50 year replacement. So we could kind of peek at the maps. But the two that they talked to us about, and this was last fall.
December.
Yeah, so this was almost a year ago when they were saying they thought both of those two culvert locations that we were looking at were 40 to 50 years replacement. But if they are looking at replacing one, there is a lot of evidence that wildlife, especially, are using the corridor.
They're not planning on replacing. Their solution is to sleeve and minimize the culvert, which they came to us. Was it last fall or the fall before, when we did all the culverts and bridges? And I don't remember exactly how long. I could pull the information if you guys have that. But we had presentation to the select board, and we went over all of the VTrans property and where the big ravine is. It's that culvert that has it's a galvanized culvert. And it's got some failure, and that's their fix is going to be to minimize that culvert. So something to think about if they haven't shared that information with you. They are doing something there. It's not replacement, it's placement. Fix and placement.
I don't think that was shared with us during the site visit.
Yeah,
so
I can get you some information and share it with Shannon, and he can forward it along.
Yeah,
we have full minutes and the whole proposal, all the drawings to it. I can find it quickly.
Yeah,
So,
if you can find it quickly,
yeah,
please do.
I'll forward it to Shannon.
We can dig it up. But
pass it along.
I know there was 2 culvert locations studied, and one of them is particularly where the brook, I'm going to say Muddy Brook, but that's in South Burlington. Allenbrook? Alderbrook, thank you. Right where Alderbrook comes in, kind of where the school is just above on the slope. That was the culvert that we were looking at.
It's like a 5-foot culvert currently. It's going to be,
I think this one's bigger than
6
that.
foot, yeah. It's going to shrink by 2 feet. I know that.
Well, send us the...
I will. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to know if you guys knew about them working in that area in the next, I think it was 5 years. It could have been 7 years. I forget exactly, but it was their immediate, here's the 3 projects we're doing in Essex in the next couple of years.
Well, what we've got from our engagement with them is there are several different units to VTrans. There's kind of planning, and there's bike ped, and there's folks that are doing just the culverts, and there's folks that are doing kind of just those limited use highways. And if you do get this into a scoping study, it would be really good, because then they kind of roll that out to all the other departments within VTrans that this is being studied by the town. And so that would help bring kind of more consistency the way VTrans is managing it, and would give the town a little bit more ability to not call the shots. You kind of have to take over ownership to completely call the shots, but have a little more say in what happens with the corridor with the scoping study. Yep.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Thanks. We can go to the next slide.
And I guess one other thing I would mention about the crossing is that right now there isn't a whole lot of development or trails to connect to on the other side of 289. There's a little bit for human connectivity, but today for wildlife connectivity, it's already a very important barrier at 289. And so creating crossing for wildlife today would be even more valuable than for humans at this moment.
Cool. Well, I mean, feel like we're already talking about partnerships here, but this is another bucket we had in the plan, was planning, partnerships, operations, and maintenance recommendations. And I feel like you guys are already doing this, but just having like a solid work plan for the Conservation and Trails Committee to figure out what y'all want to do with all those trails on town-owned land, like a maintenance plan. I mean, maybe Adam could advise on that too. They do that all the time. Speaking of which, working with the Fellowship of the Wheel also came up here, where appropriate for trail maintenance, trail decommissioning, mapping, trail quantification, etc. obtaining landowner permission for trails from some of these developments that are privately owned, where the trail kind of already like crosses over some private land, and if you guys wanted to formalize it, it would be important to have those relationships with the landowners. Developing accurate, usable maps and wayfinding signs and trail blazes. Some of the town trails have blazes, but it's still not the best if you're new to the area or are a kid. So improving wayfinding, we think, is a piece of low-hanging fruit there. Identifying priority lands for for town ownership, trails and amenities is another one that is on there. And then strong communication system between the town staff and committee members, trail manners, landowners and users. Just like having a way to get everybody in the same room to talk about how you guys want to move forward with this plan is going to be crucial. And then developing a maintenance plan for the current and future trail network. So I think that's tied into like the work plan with the Conservation and Trails Committee, if those are the guys that are going to be solely in charge of the maintenance of this. But yeah, coming up with a feasible plan for how you're going to take care of this.
And during this planning process, a trails coordinator for the town was added. And I think Harlan came on to the Parks and Rec department with a little bit more kind of land management responsibility as well. And so we already saw kind of more capacity within the town. So working with those kind of new staff positions and the committee to do that maintenance plan and the work plan for the committee, we think is a really good time to kind of reinvigorate that committee with some new work.
Yeah, and beyond the Conservation and Trails Committee, there's a lot of opportunity for volunteer engagement here too. I feel like people really get like excited and have ownership over trails that they care about, so lots of opportunities there. Sweet, and then all these recommendations came from Arrowwood. They're a little bit more like technical than the other ones, but yeah, like considering you guys are already doing this, like a broader wildlife study that assesses all of Essex beyond just the project area that Arrowwood had looked at. I think that could really make the case for like protecting that culvert for wildlife. And then avoiding building trails in hemlock forests when possible to protect deer wintering areas, because they're, they have the thick canopy, not so much snow falls in there, the deer can hang out there and they don't get as cold, it's a whole thing. Minimizing trails and trail crossings in valley bottom wetlands and other sensitive ecosystems. Maintaining existing trail-free zones if possible. These serve as wildlife refugia, and are just, we're trying to protect that like unbroken forest habitat for the wildlife that are already in Essex. I think that on their game cameras, they captured like fisher, bobcat, fox, white-tailed deer, like a pretty decent amount of megafauna, which is cool. So protecting their habitat is important. Maintaining as much natural cover as possible within the corridor is important too. So you guys could plant more trees and other native vegetation. Like Saxon Hollow Park is coming to mind as like a pretty crucial like connector point between Saxon Hill and the rest of the project area. So, and it's got some tall trees in there, but not a lot of ground cover. So are there ways to increase the plantings there while maintaining like the human recreation value to give wildlife a less stressful way to cross that piece of Essex?
And that's kind of identified on our maps, but it's a very small area between Saxon Hill and the Matthew Town Forest kind of habitat block. And there's a Saxon Hill Park and a little bit of a multifamily development. But if you could create a little bit of a planting habitat corridor, that could really create connectivity between those two larger blocks.
Yeah. And then just reducing artificial lighting at night as much as possible helps the birds and all the wildlife. Sweet. So those were our recommendation buckets, and then we kind of pulled some out that we thought the town could pursue within the first year in 2026 once this project wraps up at the end of this month, which is crazy that that's happening already. But yeah, so just continuing efforts to develop work plans and formalizing communications between all the partners that we've been talking about, working with Fellowship to take care of that low-hanging fruit with like trail mapping and all that stuff. We thought there's like some funding that you guys could pursue, and especially like a recreational trails program grant that is administered through Forest Parks and Recreation at the state. So this could be a grant that you guys could go after to pursue some of those 14 trail realignments like right now. I think it just closed in November, so you'd have to wait until next fall. But anyway, and then also applying for funding for that scoping study that we were talking about for the 289 projects, as well as, again, I think you're already doing this, but pursuing funding for that town-wide wildlife habitat study. We thought that trail counters could be really helpful to help you guys like refine the suggested like trail decommission plan that is in the full plan document. Figuring out like, we use Strava data for like the purposes of this project, but like having like another way to figure out like which trails are heavily used, which are not, and which ones feel redundant and can be closed down for the protection of wildlife. Yeah. Okay. In the plan, I just want to talk about the implementation matrix quickly. It's like includes all of our recommendations, a description of the recommendation, and then it also has like really rough like timeline about like when you guys could pursue the tasks in there, as well as how much each task could cost where relevant, in addition to potential partners, potential funding sources, any permits you might need, and additional planning needs. So we feel like it's a really helpful like spreadsheet to figure out like what's the roadmap for this project if you guys want to move forward with it. And then it also includes funding options, including some grants from VTrans, municipal planning grants, some federal grants in there, and a bunch more that we found. So I'm hoping that'll be a helpful tool for Kent and whoever else will be implementing this.
And I think I just mentioned briefly the idea about using 2 grants for wildlife crossing and human crossing and kind of matching one with the other. We have seen some communities use the VORAC grant and match a federal grant with that. The VORAC grant is a 0 match from the state, and so you can use that to cover your match for a federal grant. So you might go after VORAC again when that becomes available next fall. You could use that to match one of the other grants as well. We do see going after some of those trail reroutes is kind of your lowest hanging fruit. You could do that with a relatively small RTP grant, and we have some other sources that could cover that. And perhaps Fellowship could help put together that project, and you could do it together, perhaps.
Sweet. Sorry that took longer than maybe I wanted it to, but thank you for listening to us. Are there other questions that you have?
You spoke extremely fast and did a good job of keeping on pace.
She is good at that. That is darn sure.
I was gonna say that after listening to you speak so fast and adequately, I was like, maybe I'm like that too. Maybe we are related.
There you go. There you go.
The Lawrence speed talking gene. Yeah. Thank you guys. I can't.
Just kidding. Obviously.
This was such a fun project for us to work on. So thanks for trusting us to work with Kent and make it happen.
Thanks for the work. Any other board questions? Andy.
Is staff working on a recommendation for what we should do next? What are the next steps, I guess?
Adopt it is step number 1.
Okay.
And then I think Kent mentioned some of the low-hanging fruit. You've already, at your last meeting, you saw that you've accepted some official trails.
Right.
I think Harlan and Hans are already starting to chip away at some of that stuff.
Sick.
So I think those are kind of the first 2, but from the experts who are directly involved, any recommendations about next steps?
I will offer they did apply for the grant that they just mentioned.
Okay, perfect.
So
Good. They were on it. They were on it. We did mention that. Yep. Great.
Yeah, I think it would be really good to try to get some positive momentum going and some community, like lower scale projects that people can get involved in that just kind of keep the energy going now. So I think that finding, there's quite a few suggestions in there. I think having a little bit of time to digest it, see what kinds of ideas people are just most excited about. There's really not a wrong thing to pick first, but I think that this is a really good opportunity now to really try to keep connecting with people in the community to see what are they most excited about, and find some just really quick wins that then you can kind of keep building momentum on. Sometimes it's really hard when you pick big projects that they just take a long time to get done. It's really hard for volunteers to sort of keep the energy going sometimes. So I think those would be kind of the things I'd look at first. And then kind of in the background, keep applying for the bigger things. So you sort of have these bigger things sort of like something always in the works, but really focus on some of the quick things. But there's a lot of suggestions in there, and I still need a little bit more time to go through and really digest it and try to see, okay, well, which things strategically match best with what we're already working on. So if there's already a trail project that Parks and Rec is working on, and there's something in here that coordinates with it, then it makes more sense to coordinate something instead of something else that's a good idea, but it's kind of maybe a little bit more tangent.
Shannon.
I loved working on this, and I think it's fascinating to see. I mean, I've spent way too much time this weekend reading through all these documents and clicking on the links. I just want to highlight a few things. I really appreciate section 11 of the report that talks about all the funding opportunities, and the links there and the opportunities that, you're already thinking about the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th step down the road. And I'm psyched to hear, Kent, thank you for already applying for future grants. I think there's so much information here, and I'm excited for us to use this to our best of our ability. In the matrix, you talk about laying out timelines and possible things, and I'm thrilled that our town is investing in trails, and we now have that trail coordinator, and getting our staffing and the rec department eating this up is going to be huge. There's so many people involved, and I'm glad that many people live local, and I know the Fellowship of the Wheel has already done so much over in Saxon Hill. I hope that we can really take this and run with it. When I was 6 years old, I remember when they blasted, I lived in Pinewood, they cut through that part of the woods, and I felt like I was so disconnected from the other part of town. I really hope that in my lifetime we can get the connections back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for the recreational trails program grant, I think that was Parks and Rec that applied for that, so I wasn't involved in that one. Although maybe I will be at some point.
Other questions? Andy.
E-bikes are a wonderful thing and sometimes not. Is discussion about regulation of bicycling part of any of this, or is that a separate discussion we would need to have?
Yeah, the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation is undergoing like a pretty big policy change regarding e-bikes on, well, at least state-owned lands. But right now, I think it was 2018 that the law that was passed that it's actually up to municipalities to decide which what level of bike or e-bike is allowed. So Stowe, for example, allows just class 1 e-bikes on their trails, which is I forget what the speed limit is, but maybe you do. But they don't allow classes 2 and 3. So that could be a regulation that the town chooses to adopt, or you could wait until the FPR policy is released and follow their lead. Got some options.
I would say, especially with the trail typologies, it's going to be very different on that bike path, paved path, than it is going to be on some of those natural surface trails. I would say with your paved bike path, I really like what Burlington did. It's just a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. It's the same on roads, the bike path. Doesn't matter what you're biking on or using. It can be an e-skateboard or whatever else is made up. I like to skateboard, but there's all kinds of stuff out there. And so you just can't, whatever you're riding, 15 miles an hour. And I think that you can be really fast on a traditional bike and be going too fast, or you can be on an e-bike as well. And so I think the speed can be really helpful on that paved one as a policy. I think you're going to see less of those high speeds on the natural surface trails, and it's really hard to regulate to spot an e-bike and prevent somebody from using it. So there, I think I would kind of defer to what the state is doing, so that way you're not just going against what neighbors and the state is doing, so people kind of know what to expect with the e-bike policy. But it's probably going to be the class 1, which is a pedal assist, would be allowed, and class 2 or 3, which use a throttle, you probably wouldn't allow. That's probably what the state might do.
There's also a lot of different wattages associated with e-bikes, and then there's even something that the industry is doing that is like electric motorcycles, but they're calling bikes. And so there's a big distinction there that, those are much higher wattage. The torque output does a lot more damage to naturally surfaced trails, whereas a class 1 pedal assist or even a throttled that is for adaptive needs, doesn't create the same destruction on a trail as some of these other classification of bikes does.
I mean, my dad has an e-bike. He's in his 70s. He modded it. He's like, oh, I took off the governors. Now it's got the European speed. Like, great, Dad. And he doesn't use it, but he just did it for fun. So it's these things are out there, and people will, even if we have the regulator, people will find ways to do it. So
we have kids on 15. There's 2 kids with dirt bike looking ones, and they go all the way down the road. So I see Andy's concern.
There's a guy on the Burlington Bike Factory who's doing it every day on the e-motors.
It's literally a dirt bike.
Yeah.
With an electric motor.
But the speed limit helps there.
Yeah.
He's still doing it, but he's not allowed to do it.
I was in Seattle riding on a train, and there was this guy on one of those the fat wheel skateboard thing, keeping up with the train, and it was insane. I had to look away. Well, fortunately, the train stopped, and he just kept going, so we didn't see him again. But it was terrifying.
Thrill seeking.
I do think a speed limit on the paved rec path system is a good way to go.
Yeah.
That way, and it doesn't matter what people are using.
Yep. but then the
Safe
question
speed.
of enforcing it might be a challenge. So.
Yeah.
So if there are no other board questions, I'm going to switch over to public comment. If there is any public comment on the Keystone Trail connectivity project. Ken?
Hi, Ken Signorello. Did I miss it, or was this presentation made to the Conservation and Trails Committee?
This was not, the presentation was
Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. Okay. On the culverts. So it was sometime before April the 9th, 2024. There were 4 they call them all culverts bridges. There was the one under Route 15. 17A is the one under 289 that we've been talking about, I think. And one under 2A, another one under 15. So the Conservation and Trails Committee latched on to the 17A one. We actually wrote a memo to V-Trans about it. A lot of the concerns you had narrowing it was going to be problematic. We actually recommended shortening it because it's very long. As you know, in wildlife, looking down a long tube with a little light at the very, very end is not so encouraged to go through. So it can be done with embankments where you cut the slope down on both sides, maybe knock off 50 feet or so. So that's when it happened. To answer your question, it was probably at the select board meeting just before April the 9th, most likely. And yeah, we did express those concerns. Also flooding, obviously, is going to be a concern going forward. So narrowing it at all is not wise. And of course, the reason for the corrosion is because of the acidic soil in that area. And when we put in the pollinator garden at Prairie Field, which drains right into that area, the pH was very, very low, very acid. And that's most likely what caused the rotting out of the culvert. So their repair, yeah, they called it grouting, the narrowing of it. And yeah, with this project possibly in hand, this might be additional encouragement for going that plan and maybe doing something a little more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Any other public comment? Not seeing any hands online. Not seeing any other hands in the room. So I'll bring it back to the board. Shannon.
I make the motion that the select board adopt the Keystone Trail Connectivity Project Plan.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any final discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Our business item 6G, consider final adoption of handbook for boards, committees, and commissions and their staff representatives.
Oh no, not this again.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Are we good
Yep.
on this?
So the first time that, I think the first time this was brought to us, the first date on the draft is May 14th of this year. So we're 2 weeks shy of 7 months. Hi, Tammy.
Well, that's a stark reminder, isn't it? Yes. Hi, everyone. So yes, that's the timeline that when we started this, but we have made a lot of changes over that period of time. I guess I would also add to that during the September 15th meeting, the first approval did go through. So tonight we're looking to do the final approval. I guess my opening comments would be basically to remind everybody that the purpose of this is it's a handbook. It's not like a laid out policy. It's to provide guidance and expectations on a number of topics, but it will be referencing and linking to laws, and it has, I think, a number of attachments that are existing policies that also, as those get updated, will be changed out to reflect those new updates. So the fine details and the steps that that our staff representatives and boards and committees are going to be expected to follow are really going to be in the details of those laws and those attachments and those links. The handbook itself highlights some of the pieces that we want to make sure that they pay attention to. So it's not actually just laying out that entire law. So I just want to remind everybody that this is just a handbook, essentially. We do want to get it right. I do anticipate, and another reason why I'm saying all of this ahead of time is that I do anticipate that this handbook will require updates often, because just in the time that we've been presenting this, we've had to update it because the law has changed, and our policies here have changed, and our expectations have changed. So every time something like that happens, we've gone in and done another update. So there's like a lot of red and blue and all sorts of marks on this right now, but that's because that's 7 months worth of updating we've been doing. But I would anticipate that's not going to stop. That's going to continue because we continue to evolve. We have different committees come in. Every time we might have a new committee, attachment A is going to change automatically. So this is, let me see, what are my other notes that I had on here? I was like, I'm kind of running out of things to actually open with, but that was my big opener. Oh, primarily we're going through this process here. One of the first thoughts was to kind of have it approved as a policy simply because we're going to be replacing a number of policies. So I do want to reference that as well, that list is made available, and I think actually the policies are in your packet that would be replaced by this handbook. Many of them are just simply outdated, very old policies. So Greg and I talked about this and thought it was wise to treat this as a policy so that it kind of officially overrules and makes those policies void. With that, since the September 15th meeting, we had basically walked away with a directive to make sure that all of the boards and committees were going to have an opportunity to put this on their agendas and discuss it as a board, which we did do that. Some of the boards had no further comment. They'd already had their comments. Some had additional comments. And all of those comments with staff responses are all listed also in your packet. There's a number of them. And I don't know if I really had anything else to add to that. I guess I would just open that up to any questions you might have at this point.
Ethan.
I have a question for you, Madam Chair. In the essence of the time that's been dedicated to this, I would urge the select board to, if there's any changes, to propose a change and it be voted on, and if not, we hear from the public and call the question. There's been plenty of time to reach out to staff to make any changes to this, and I do not feel like discussing this for a lengthy amount of time, as though there's been more than enough time to consolidate questions to Tammy, and it's time to move on.
Noted. Are there any board comments or clarifications that are needed?
Yes.
Shannon.
One thing, Madam Chair, this is a question for you. I know you do a monthly meeting with committees. I did not see that mentioned here in talking about, meetings, different things. I didn't know if that was something, if this is a guide handbook, it might be good to add that in, that the chair of the select board and one other member meets with them. Is that something that you just do as chair? Is that an official?
It's just something that I've done to increase collaboration, feedback, discussion. It's not an official meeting. It's just a very informal discussion.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to tie
Well, that's why I didn't want to say it was something, and without speaking with you.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the responsibility of the select board chairperson. But if it was, that's something you wanted to start, could be. I have a few things, and I hear you, Ethan. I think this is something that we have spent a lot of time on, but not half as much time as Tammy and her staff and the entire staff have put into this. So I greatly appreciate that. You've put immense work into this, and the number of attachments to this alone, and the responses you have to every single comment from the public, from boards, from chair people, does not go unnoticed. As you might have noticed during each meeting with, specifically the DRB and the PC, I have asked them specifically if, they are concerned or, have worry about the fact that there could be a problem with a dual chairperson of those two committees. And I know on page 12 we have spoken about this before, but with this new information, I'd like to either make an official motion or actually just talk with the select board and pass in a straw poll that I think we should establish in this handbook. Maybe it's just that those two committees, or it's in the entirety thing of all the committees and all the governing policies, that we do not have two people, especially on those two committees, be the same chair.
The select board did vote on this previously.
We did vote on it previously.
To add it in, and I believe it was a 3-2 vote to not add it in, and the general feeling of the board was that it should be up to those statutorily defined committees in order to identify their own chairs. So as we have talked about recently, I do not think that we should revisit something that the board has already taken action on.
I mean, I hear you, Madam Chair, and I respect that. But the fact that we have continually brought this back to the select board, I feel that new information from both chair people of those committees brings that back to, be open to another vote.
Andy?
Statutorily, those groups have the authority to set their own operating procedures, and it's up to them to define their own procedures to make that ruling. I don't believe the select board can make that choice for them.
Should the board want to force that choice, it would be no overlapping members, and the board has the authority to appoint who they wish to appoint, and not having any overlapping members should they choose to do so. But the board has already taken action on that, so I firmly believe that that should stand.
I hear you.
Sorry.
All right. Well, we can amend this in the future, it sounds like.
Yes. There is always that opportunity. You said you had a few things?
Maybe the major one is, I do think, and obviously having met with all the boards, there is a variety of autonomy and personal time you can put into being a chair. So I understand that we're trying to set this up as a standard, and obviously some chairs can go above and beyond, and some chairs will need more help from staff. I do think on page 10, on the onboarding of new members, the second clause of that first bullet point reads, the chair of the board may wish to attend onboarding meetings with new members. I think that may wish should be a should, at least. May wish sounds like it is very wishy-washy. I think that, if you're a chairperson of a committee, you should be attending unless, something comes up. But I think that terminology kind of makes it seem as if it's not their responsibility at all. Similarly, in that same vein of empowering the chair and expecting things out of them, on page 11, and I know in the comments you did mention this to one of Mr. Signorello's comments about drafting the agenda and maintaining the website, but the added clause of as time permits, I feel like really undercuts the importance of keeping that webpage up to date. The second bullet point on page 11, I don't feel like that. I feel like all these things, when you talk about responsibilities, everything in a job description or a roles and responsibilities is important, and obviously you can work with your manager and different things as what is the prioritization, but putting that clause in there really undercuts the importance of keeping a website up to date. We saw that today, actually, the PCAB, if the Junctions seat has been filled, that website is not up to date, and it sounds like that has been filled for a number of months now. I think it's important with our forward-facing things for them to be as up to date as possible. So those are two suggestions that I would like to see altered.
Andy, comment on that?
I'm pretty sure I heard Ethan call the question, and I thought the following action from that should be a vote whether to.
Okay,
end-
if
end
that was
debate.
your intent.
Yeah, that was
I
my
didn't-
full intent. I don't
didn't
want
use
to
that
discuss this. I did. I said that I do not want to discuss this, and this has been on for 3 months, and that we had many weeks for this. There's been feedback now back to Tammy for over a week and a half. Anybody that wanted to finalize feedback could have contacted Tammy and sat down with her and discussed. And I'd said that rather than discussing, I would like to hear public comment and then call the question.
Okay, so you don't want to call the question, you want to cease board debate. Because calling the
Well, I
question
can't call it.
means
I can
that
make
we
a motion
vote
and call the
through
question, but
motion.
I'm skipping due process of public comment. So I'm requesting public comment so I can make a motion.
Okay, so move to call the, okay.
Sorry if I
Does
said it
anybody
wrong.
disagree with that approach?
I do. I think that this is on our agenda to talk about this tonight, and we have every right to talk about it. And thus, Ethan said his piece, then there was no motion on the floor here. Board called to me, I raised my points.
True, if there's not.
So I hear you, Ethan, and I understand you want to get out of here early, but
Yeah.
this is
It's not about
important.
getting out of here early. It's about if you're compassionate about something, you have to put in the work ahead of the meeting in order for Tammy to have responses for any of these.
We've been working on this for 7 months.
Right. So why doesn't Tammy know about your questions for the last week and a half when she's heard back from all the other committees? Why haven't you reached out to Tammy?
All right,
about
so
it?
instead of having back and
Right.
forth, Ethan, it's my understanding that you're making a motion to cease board debate on this item. Is
Correct.
accurate? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion to cease debate has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion to cease debate passes 3-2. We will now move to public comment on the handbook for committees. Is there any comment, questions, clarifications from members of the public? Ken, come forward.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Tammy's done a lot of work on this, and I'm looking at it for the first time recently, and I see changes, which is nice. Right off the bat, on the acknowledgement page, no longer are you required to say that you actually agree with it. You just have to agree that you read it and received it. I still see no commitment from staff on that page, which still does concern me. I took a look at the Conservation and Trails Committee website today. I think it's maybe the third time I'm mentioning it now. Still not up to date. Wrong clerk. So I wonder if staff is able to do this long list of responsibilities. It's a lot. I'm a little bit concerned about it, but again, there's not much of a commitment really on a member here anymore, which is, I think, an improvement because it has to be a two-way street, and I don't think it is at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Any other public comment? Seeing none online, no others in the room, I'll bring it back to the board.
Just point of clarification, real quick. By ceasing debate, I did say at the beginning, though, that I was more than open for any changes to be made a motion and voted on. So I'm not denying of change. I'm just denying of long discussion, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed the right word to say, but I was trying to follow the right process.
Okay, so we're back at board discussion. Well, we ceased debate, so would anyone like to make a motion, or is it just going to Shannon?
I motion that on page 11 of this handout that we strike the language as time permits from the second bullet point.
Shannon, I'm just trying to find where that is. Is the track changes version or the clean version? That's
track
page 11.
Track changes.
Track changes.
Page 11. Second bullet. Okay, so there's been a motion. Is there a second?
1 second.
Thank you, Kendall. Is everybody clear on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2 to remove as time permits from the second bullet on page 11. Shannon.
I motion that on page 10, under the onboarding section, I'm going to fill time with some noise while I find it so I can strike it. Under the onboarding section, in the first paragraph, the second sentence, or first bullet point, second sentence, which I would like it to say, instead of the chair of the board may wish to attend ... I would like it to read, the chair of the board should attend onboarding meetings with new members.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kendall. Did you have a?
We're not gonna have a discussion? This is where it becomes weird.
Yeah.
We got a discussion on the motion.
And there's a discussion on an actual motion, but
And it should be shall instead of should.
well, shall means you have to.
No, shall
should
means you have to.
means
Should means
best
it's
practice
encouraged.
is. Andy.
I think
May is encouraged.
I think chairs of committees need to have the freedom to act as they choose. I don't think we should mandate any volunteer to attend a specific meeting. I'm not in favor of it.
It just said the chair of the board may attend onboarding meetings instead of should. Should feels like a judgment, where may is a welcome. Does that change your viewpoint?
So I haven't actually found where you're making this change, but no, I'm not. I'm fine with may. I prefer may because it means that the chair can't be barred from attending, but it means that they can attend if they choose to. I think chairs should be free to handle their volunteer time as they choose to. I mean, just like we do. We are not required to attend any meeting.
Shannon?
I viewed this document as a handbook is something that you should strive to achieve, and using the word should in my mind was saying that we would hope that a leader of a committee will prioritize their members at welcoming the new members onto the board and letting them know how things would go. So, I just thought it would be a little more encouraging, and obviously leaves it with saying should and not shall, which was something we brought up 7 months ago. I thought that instead of saying shall, which is a demanding, you have to do this, should would be, we would hope that chairs of a board, which they have volunteered and also, been appointed to a leadership position, would be part of the process and not just expect the staff to handle it.
Kendall?
I would just add that should is more consistent with the rest of it because you have should and shall throughout the whole handbook versus may.
All right. Ethan, any comment?
Nope.
Okay, so motion was made and seconded to change the chair of the board may wish to attend onboarding meetings with new members to the chair of the board should attend onboarding meetings with new members, excuse me. Does everybody understand the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay.
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 Motion carries 3-2. Any other motions?
Make a motion we approve the handbook for board committee and commission members and their staff representatives as amended.
Is it approve or adopt?
Sorry if I used the wrong one. I'm in the packet, not the memo.
Sorry,
It says adopt.
It is adopt.
Okay, adopt. Sorry for the...
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kendall.
We're going to approve it now, right?
Everybody clear on the motion to adopt with... Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Tammy, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
To all of the committees and people who gave input, thank you.
Yep.
And that, my fine friends, leads us to the end of our business items. The only item left is an executive session item. So we're going to move forward to the reading file. Board member comments? Shannon?
I want to echo what Ken brought up in the beginning about the Conservation Fund survey. I thank the committee as well as the members of the committee that spearheaded the effort. And I hope that we can use this in future talks of funding and how we use that Conservation Fund best.
Stole my thunder. That was going to be my comment.
Ditto.
Ditto. Any other board comments?
I was going to say that that is an excellent first draft of a policy for donations. I think that's great.
Ethan?
I just wanted to make a comment about the news article that's in the reading file. I'm just curious what the relevance is and why that's in our reading file. It's not. It's just a comment. It's not a question. It's a board
There was
comment.
a board member request to have it in there.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, I was going to also comment on the donations policy, and I just, I've mentioned before through emails earlier, making sure that we handle the library correctly, because I know that the trustees would deal with any donations there rather than the select board. And I know there's a reference in there to statute, but I just want to make sure we also have the financial support that they might need to handle donations that they receive with conditions attached to them. The other complicating factor is the Friends of the Library is an independent 501c3, and I know, because my wife's the chair of the library trustees, that they sometimes get checks that are written to either Essex Free Library or Friends of the Essex Free Library, and there's questions about what the intent of the donor is and where it should go, because if it's written to the Essex Free Library, it becomes town money. If it's written to the Friends, it's for the Friends money. And so I just want to, and I know we have nothing to do with setting their policy. I just want to make sure that there's no inconsistencies there. The other thing I wanted to bring up is just wanted to say out loud that our meeting on Friday is at 8:30, not at 8 o'clock. Because it was on my calendar at 8 o'clock. I had it written at home at 8 o'clock, and then I saw on Front Porch Forum was at 8:30, and then I saw in here again. So it's been clarified. The meeting notice has been updated, so it is 8:30 on Friday.
Good reminder.
I'm gonna bake some sourdough focaccia to bring to share.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe a little jalapeno cheddar too on the side, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
There's
Andy, the public's heard now. They might need
I'll
to
bring
make
the butter. I'll
Yeah.
churn some butter.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I'm not going to share that far, I guess, am I? With one little focaccia.
Anything else for the? Oh, anything else for the reading file? Ethan?
No, sorry. Not the reading file.
Well, I
Something
don't
else.
see anybody else, so. Ethan?
I move that Select Board enter into executive session to discuss the appointment or evaluation of a public officer or employee in accordance with 1 VSA Section 313A3 to include the town manager and deputy town manager.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second? Thank you, Shannon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Do we have anything to come back from? No. Okay, we will only be coming back to adjourn. We are now in executive. Thanks.